clock, and then you'll say nothing. Can I have your attention, please? We're going to start up shortly. Good evening, and welcome to the August 18th, 2008 Lowell Planning Board meeting. This evening, we do have 3 public hearings on, and several matters that are under new business for public hearing, and some other matters that have been continued from old business. At this point in time, the first matter on the agenda would be the approval of the minutes of the April 7th, 2008 meeting. Did all members have a chance to look over those minutes or have any comments or corrections? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve the minutes from April 7th, 2008.
Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from April 7th, 2008.
I'll second.
Motion is made and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes yes. The minutes have been accepted. Thank you. Moving along, I'd like to take 2 matters out of order, to entertain 2 matters that will take a very quick period of time that we have under our old business, and that is scheduled for a lot release. This is Residents First Development Corporation. It is located at 1436 Gorham Street. The board will discuss the lot release proposal for the remaining 26 lots in Zone 4 of the development plan located in the Residents First Corporation project. Proposed lots are located on Chippewa and McGrigan Circle. May we hear the case for the applicant, please?
We would like to amend our request to include only 8 lots, lots 63 to 69 and lot 48, due to a change in the construction sequence on the development. The lots are generally located right along Chippewa Street, which runs from River's Edge to the existing road outside of the subdivision. As we've done in the past, this release will be subject to approval of the roadway and infrastructure by the city engineer and the issuance of occupancy permits by the building inspector. The binder code is scheduled to go down tomorrow, and we won't be requesting a final inspection by the city engineer until the finished coat of paving is installed later this month. One thing that's come up with the city officials in the past is this statement: inherent in the release is inherent in the approval of these lots is the assumption that the city of Lowell will take over the normal city services, including plowing, trash removal, and related services that are common in the city of Lowell. I'm ready to answer any questions that the board would have.
Thank you, Mr. Connors. Any of the board members have any questions, concerns? If not, entertain a motion to release the lots.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion's made.
Second.
And second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes yes. If the matter carries, 5 votes in favor.
Mr. Chairman, if the record can show that I'm abstaining on...
Okay, and we have 1 abstention, okay? So we have 4 in favor and 1 abstention, okay?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We do have one other matter under old business, and this is Pilot Perkins LLC, 21-39 Perkins Street, Lowell, Mass. This is addressed to the myself as chairman of the planning board and board members. This is by Attorney James Flood. I am in the process of preparing a zoning opinion regarding the financing for the redevelopment of the existing mill buildings at the above reference. As you will recall, in June of 2006, the planning board approved a special permit for the redevelopment of the mills into 193 residential units. Subsequent to your approval and after the demolition of the interior of the existing mills, the project was reduced from 193 units down to 183 units. I have been asked for opinion to construct the 183 units is included in the original approval. I would appreciate if it could be obtained a letter from the planning board approving the reduction amount of the units. So, Mr. Flood, you're looking to reduce it down 10
Well,
units?
yeah, we are down to 183. That's what we intend to build, but the lawyer representing one of the banks in Boston said, well, how do I know that the approval of 193 includes the 183? And I said, well, I think, I mean, it's less.
Right.
It shouldn't be a problem. So I would like a letter, if I could, from that effect, that it's all included in the same approval so I can go forward with it.
Any
That's
board
all.
members have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, it's an existing mill building, so it's not, we're not concerned whether it's additional units being built off to the side. It's fewer units, as Attorney Flood mentioned. I certainly would make a motion that we would approve the request.
I'll second the motion.
Motion's made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Mr. Chairman, I just had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Flood, you know I'm always in favor of reducing units. That's good. I was just curious, is there any change in the floor plan or anything like that? To
Well,
get from
there'd be
one?
different size units inside, but we're not expanding the building at all. So
Okay.
be different size units inside.
Okay, that's fine.
While I'm here, Mr. Chairman, I noticed in your old business you have Applewood Construction to the Hickory Hills subdivision. I saw that on the agenda. I tried to reach him today. He's up in Acadia National Park in Maine and will be gone to next week, so I handled the original approval. I don't know whether this could be put over to your next meeting and I can speak to him and get a response to you, what he intends to do.
I can also add a little bit to that, too.
Sure,
Actually,
go ahead.
I received an email from Mr. Erickson a couple days ago letting me know that he was going to be on vacation, so I was going to hand that out to you guys. Basically saying he has planning on taking care of the issue. He did asphalt it, but not to the standard that the city engineer was looking for.
Right.
So essentially, he agreed that he would go ahead and get that taken care of. He just couldn't make it here because he's on vacation, so.
Yeah, he won't be back till next week, so whatever you want to do, but
How about if we continue to put on the next agenda, and if it's satisfied if people feel that through Division of Planning and Development and whoever else, and through the city boards are satisfied with that, if they entertain a letter to us saying that they're satisfied with the work, then they may not need to appear.
right.
That's satisfactory?
Fine, that's fine, thank you.
Okay. Any boards have any comments on that? Just put it over and see if he gets the work done the next month?
Makes sense.
Okay? So I'll entertain a motion if we can continue the Hickory Hill subdivision to next September meeting.
So moved.
So move.
Thank you.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. That matter's continued to the September, first meeting in September. Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I think, did we get a vote on the Perkins Place request?
On the which
I've
one?
got a first.
We had a
I got
motion and a second,
motion,
no vote.
but
Which one, I'm sorry?
for the Perkins Place
Yes,
request to reduce.
we approve that.
Okay, that was 5-0, okay.
Right. And that's the letter that he sent to us, if that helps you? Okay. Yes,
Thank you.
there was a motion allowed in second, and so we've already taken care of Perkins Place, we took care of the Residents First Development and Hickory subdivision. Now we're back on to the public hearings. Sorry for the delay. The first public hearing is 1235 Bridge Street, as we all know is Market Basket. A public hearing will be held to hear all interested persons relative to an application by Valley Properties, Inc. for site plan review of the property located at 1235 Bridge Street. The proposal includes the demolition of an existing 133,100 square foot retail building containing, among other businesses, a market basket and a vacant Ames department store, and construction in its place a 110,500 square foot shopping center consisting of 3 separate buildings. One building will be 91,062 square feet and house an expanded market basket grocery store and space for 3 additional commercial tenants. One tenant is 5,200 square feet retail building is proposed at the northern corner of the lot, and a 14,157 square foot pharmacy featuring a drive-through window is proposed at the southern portion of the lot. The project includes the reconfiguration of parking and interior vehicle circulation, accommodating an additional 29 parking spaces for a total of 383. Adjust the location of the access points to the site off Bridge Street and provide additional landscaping throughout. The site is approximately 8.9 acre site, is located in the Regional Retail Zoning District and requires site plan approval under section 11.4 of the zoning code of the City of Lowell. May we hear the case for the applicant, please?
Evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Jim Lamp with J&Co, representing Valley Properties. If it's okay, can I approach and use the...
Yes, you can, sir.
Mr. Chairman, as I said, my name is Jim Lamp, and we are here to propose the redevelopment of the Sunrise Shopping Center. And for the most part, we were here before the board as a preliminary hearing. For the most part, everything has stayed relatively the same. The retail on the far southern side has gotten a little smaller and a little thinner. That's out of request from the tenant out front, Walgreens. We've added additional green space. We've added additional details for buffer walls with the butters after meetings with them. And we've tried to address most of the comments that we've had with staff. We've received the staff's letter as well as other department letters. The one item that's, I believe, still outstanding with the staff's comment letter is there is a crosswalk in this location here that was going to be a stamped asphalt crosswalk painted for a different texture, and that has not been addressed. The proposal, I guess, for folks that are here that haven't been around, the proposal is to redevelop completely the center. It's about 135,000 square feet today. We're proposing to reduce that by 25,000 square feet. The main purpose of this is to increase the square footage of the market basket and then to maintain the tenancies of the smaller tenants on site. The parking is going to be increased by a slight amount, around 30, 40 spaces. The landscaping is going to be increased by over half an acre. So when we reduce the square footage of the building, most of that land that's coming out of the building, the 20,000 to 25,000 square feet, is going to go into green space. We do have a scheduled hearing before the ZBA for several variances and special exceptions, but for the most part, those variances are a betterment of an existing nonconformity on the site. One of the requirements is for tree landscaping within the parking lot. Right now, we have somewhere around, say, 8 or 9 trees within the parking lot. We're going to get up into the 80, 90 tree range. We have also a request for a drive-through, which is a special permit. The drive-through is for the pharmacy, not for any fast food. It's really for the convenience of people picking up and dropping off prescriptions. We have a request for a variance from the driveway width as well as the curb cut widths, and this has to do with the technicality of how those are measured. Some of the ones today are actually, most of them are all in non-conformance. Some are getting a little bit bigger, some are getting smaller. It's more related to how trucks access in and out of the site. We've submitted, along with the plans, a traffic report, also a drainage report. We anticipate traffic to decrease from where the center was fully occupied. We have done some planning in order to reduce the traffic on Willard Street by service vehicles. Traffic now, which enters the back, the existing building actually blocks off any ability for truck traffic to access Bridge Street. So all truck traffic to the site servicing the buildings actually enters from Willard Street and leaves from Willard Street. We're creating a one-way flow for service, which will come in, service the buildings, and then leave by Bridge Street. So we're reducing the truck traffic on what we look at as a residential street by 50%. Which we also have talked about is the improved traffic circulation on site. We've created 2 necks coming into the building so that you've isolated the main entrance and exit movements from the rest of the parking lot. You've allowed for a queue to get onto Bridge Street. We've kept the same number of curb cuts on Bridge Street at 3. One of the concerns the board had was this access point here, which we've signed as service entrance only. The exit we predict will be mainly just for the drive-through to exit out. If they want to go back on the site, they can loop around and come back on the site. With that, that's a brief overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board has.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Did anybody else on behalf of the applicant want to speak? I mean, your engineers or anybody at this time?
We're prepared to just
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Anybody like to speak in favor of the project? Just step to the microphone if you would, sir, and cite your name for the record if you would.
Conrad Gothier, Centerville Neighborhood Action Group, please. We like the Demoulas plan, but we have some reservations, and we'd like to be able to discuss them. We have met a couple of times with Mr. Clamp, and we haven't really come down to discuss the terms. When we were here at the last meeting, we said we'd get together and iron out some of the things that we thought were necessary to make the project go forward. We've had a couple of meetings, but we haven't really come together and talked about some of the issues that we're opposed to. If I could come forward, please. I brought some plans with me.
Okay, if I may, we did receive a packet, which was signed off by Anne Marie Page from the president of your association.
Yes.
She listed your concerns. Are these the concerns that you're going to address, or these are just for our? She went down and said, we have a few items to be reviewed if allowed. She put a packet together. She had a question about the trees, the crosswalk, the sign, the pharmacy. Are these the matters that you're going to address, or that's something different?
Oh, yes, sir. Yep.
Okay.
I guess what starts off being...
You need the microphone if you would, please, sir? If you could use the microphone, so people watching at home can hear you. Thank you.
When we're trying to figure out the plans that we have, and we're talking about green space, how important it is to the neighborhood, and, you know, green space is defined by, like, just about anything, trees, park mulch, anything that would help absorb the water. When we already have some green space there that really is lawn, it kind of goes against our craw to see, I've measured it out to be 1,600 square feet of grass that's going to be eliminated to put black bark mulch down. I mean, we have the black asphalt, we have the black bark mulch. And just to give you an example about what we're talking about, this is really what the building looks like with the, not including the bark mulch, by the way. This is what all the asphalt looks like. And we're concerned about parking. We've taken their building that's on, in the acre, their new building. It's a very attractive building. It's in the acre. And in the acre, they have 92 parking spaces existing, and they were only required to have 82 parking spaces. So they accepted to build a project there with 12% fewer or more parking spaces than what they'd really like to have. They'd like to go wall to wall with their parking spaces. The idea, as I understand it, is that on the 5 busiest days of the year, nobody should be able to drive by Market Basket and not find an empty parking space. I think that's overkill. We've done is we've tried to make a comparison between Market Basket on Broadway or up in the acre and our Market Basket that we're proposing over here. There's 66% more parking space. We think some of that parking space could be more green space. And that is one of the things that we were interested in talking to most people about, how we could come to compromise on what we think is overabundance of parking spaces. I don't know, it just seems that, when we've had our meetings, Mr. Lamp has listened to everything we've had to say, but there's been no comeback, sit down one-on-one and talk about some of the things that we spoke here about at the last meeting, like fencing. I know that I understand that they've put in electronic carts. That was important to us. But lighting, fencing, and more green space is also important to us. So this is why we're here tonight, to talk about some of these things. We're looking at, we talked about before, about following the guidelines, or MIT guidelines, which we make available to people that want to come and do business with us. And I'm going to be a little bit corny here tonight, but this rebuilding shirt is about what we're talking about, of rebuilding our neighborhood. We don't want builders to come in, for instance, CVS, they did a wonderful job for us. We want to be able to talk to the builders and then afterwards find out what can we do to make each other happy. So we want to rebuild our neighborhood. We want to have successful people moving in. Demoulas property is certainly successful there, or they wouldn't be there again. The buildings have been run down and deteriorated and look very, very bad for a long time. There's been an empty property there, a huge building, Ames department store, has been vacant for years and years. 2.5 years ago, I met Mr. Martin. He told me at that time there were plans in the works I met him in the store. I introduced myself to him. There were plans in the works to do the store over. Now it's 2.5 years later. We'd like to see that come into fulfillment. We also would like to see some of the things that the neighborhood thinks are important to be taken care of. So that's about all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak in favor of the project? Yes, sir. Just come to the microphone, state your name for the record if you would, please. If you just take those down with you, sir. Mr. Gothia, if you just take your plaques down with you, that way we might, if anybody has any questions on the site, that way Mr. Lamb can answer those for us. Thank you.
My name is Stephen Green. I reside at 181 Market Street, and I just want to comment in favor of the project, but also suggest that in addition to provisions for regular waste management and solid waste management, that there specifically is enough space for recycling. Too often later on in the future, people say, oh, don't have space for the extra bins. Should be taken care of now. That's my comment. Thank you.
Very much, sir. Appreciate it. The question he had is he wanted to see if you could look into the future, if not now, about recycling. So in the future, as recycling gets more and more important, as we study more and more green aspect, if you'd have enough capacity to meet the future needs of recycling. Correct, sir? Okay. You're welcome. Anybody else like to speak in favor of the project?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board, ladies and gentlemen, for the record, my name is Mark Coleman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. And I wish to be recorded in favor of this project. It is an excellent project. It will be a great improvement for the area. I also want to say that I support the ideas of open space that the CNAC group wants. If you look also, and just for comparison, what Market Basket did on Broadway Street, very good. They have a place, also a shopping center on Wood Street, and you don't have any open space. So you contrast the two, and you know that open space is needed, particularly in Centerville. So that would be a great improvement. I also want to echo the sentiment, the remarks of Mr. Green. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak in favor of the project? In favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anyone like to speak in opposition? Sure. Step to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, if you would, please, sir.
Michael Najar. I'm a lawyer here in Lowell at 45 Merrimack Street, and I'm here on behalf of Roland and Janine Roy, who are abutters. We're not really opposed to the project. We just want to put on record our one concern that the Roys already have been working with Mr. Lamp and another gentleman on trying to resolve, but we'll put it on record. They have the property that is abutting right around where the proposed pharmacy is. And you can imagine that they would want some screening. They have a residential property there. They actually thought that they had this worked out with the original plan, which did not show a change to the grade to the property in that area, so that the Demula's land, the Market Basket land, and the Roy land actually was of the same level, and they were going to have a wall, a 6-foot wall with an arborvitae. Since that time, the project has called for some regrading of that area, which will help with the building for the pharmacy, but that then changes the necessary heights of the wall, or something else will need to be done, like a chain link fence, because the wall on one side will be higher than it would be obviously on the other side, because the grades will be different. So that's got to be accommodated, and that will be accommodated in part by a chain link fence. What we're working on now is trying to do that in a way that the chain link fence won't be visible to the Roy. So we're working on it. We don't have it completely squared away yet, but we're hopeful.
Okay. Do you mind if I have Mr. Lamp respond to that, Counsel?
God, not
Sure.
at all.
Thank you.
Of course.
Do you mind, Mr. Lamp, at this time responding to that question?
Sure, I can make my effort at it. We've met with the Roys and the Pappases. In essence, the two properties, the Roys and the Pappases, we had agreed, before we had gotten to the real design, we had agreed to a 6-foot concrete wall along the entire connecting property line. The side that is visible by the abutters is going to have a fieldstone facade on it, so it's going to look like a dry, or a wet stone wall on their side. What happened was, with the entrance point and the building in this location, today it slopes down probably 4 or 5 feet. With the building here and the grades from the road dictating it, it had to be graded flat across. So we've ended up with anywhere from it being flush across. So the grade, you have the wall, the grade are the same on both sides. And then what's happened is, on our side, the grade has come up in some areas, and when it comes back down. For the most part, it's really in this location that I think we're concerned with. With that grade change, what happens is now this 5-foot wall becomes mountable. And so someone can get on top of this wall, get into the yards, the abutters' yards, or fall and hurt themselves. It becomes a liability for everybody involved. So what we had done was we had forwarded the concepts with some details, and in our discussions, they said, what about the chain link fence? Now, you know, I've got my own opinions on what works for me, but the neighbors really have the call on this. They said, we don't really like the fence on the wall. 6 feet with 4 feet on top of it, it's starting to feel too tall. So the last change we did was we said, okay, you have the wall, and our side being on this side, we'll put the fence on the ground on this side, so we have that 48 inches that no one can get over. So you meet code, and you have the protection to keep people from getting to the wall. The latest discussion is really as simple as, do you put the fence on the wall side or on the other side of the arborvitaes? And so I look at it as being a minor detail. My preference as an engineer would be put it on the wall side, get it as tight to the wall as possible. Don't create an area where things can happen behind the fence and between the wall. As a kid, I'd be on top of that wall in a heartbeat, walking along it. The more you're able to keep people from getting to it, the better. But I think we're willing to work with the abutters and come up with what is satisfactory. I think the fence goes away probably somewhere in this location here as the grades come down as we get away from the building, and then it's really just a 6-foot concrete wall that can't be mounted. Is that pretty much where we stand?
Very accurate, yeah. Being shorter, it would have been harder for me to get to the top of the wall.
Well, that'll be a safety issue for you then, you know? So do you feel confident that they can work out that
I
issue
had
with
just
the
gotten
nation?
involved in this actually today. So
Okay.
I've already talked to him, and I spoke with Mike Kattenbach, and I do think it's something that we'll be able to straighten out.
And just in addition, another thing that came up is because the yards actually slope down, everything kind of comes down to this low point. We're creating drains into the wall that will go into our system to make sure that we don't back up water on their land. And we've got an agreement out that we're working on the language so that we can go and maintain that, and that they have an easement to drain their properties onto our property. So that's just, you know, it's these kind of details that we're working through, and I have no doubt that we'll get to the...
So obviously, if you're working with an easement with them to begin with, and that would have to be addressed at the same time
It
you're
has to
doing
be
the wall.
signed off by both parties, and I think it's to the advantage, it's very much to the advantage to have those properties positively drained and make sure we don't pond the backyards.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anyone else want to speak? I know that was kind of in opposition, but kind of in favor, but we'll say in the opposition side. Anyone want to speak in opposition? Just your name and address for the record, please, ma'am.
Marion Barad, I own property at 21 Emerson Ave. I'd like to have an idea on what's happening to that left side of the property that's going to be redone, abutting our properties.
Mr. Lamp, do you know what piece of property is hers?
Left side, I assume the north side?
The left side going up Emerson. There's 3 houses on the right side going up.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to have the original site plan as it exists today, so you can
I haven't seen anything. Nobody's approached me at all.
What happens is, ma'am, when they advertise it, if you want to look at the plans, you have to actually come down here and look at them. They don't bring them out to all the neighbors. They do it by mail letter. They do it by advertisement in the paper. And if you have concern, you come down to Division of Planning and Development, and you can look at the plans here.
Okay, what we have here is just a rendering of the existing building. We didn't color in the parking lot, but you can see the existing building gets within 10, 12 feet of the property line in this location here. The parking lot comes all the way over to Emerson Ave, and there's an embankment, and then the first house lot. What we're proposing to do is that we're actually backing that building off considerably, almost 60 feet off of that property line. We're landscaping, we're increasing that landscape areas. If you can just look real quickly in this location here, it probably triples the amount of landscaping. And we've actually, in talking to Aaron, we've increased, we're saving most of the trees on the hill. we're able to grade, and the trees that are right up against the building, for the most part, are staying, and those are fairly old, but then we're going to buffer it again with additional evergreen trees along that line. So I think the building movement away is, in my opinion, a good thing.
Is there going to be any part of a, kind of a roadway going through
There's
there?
going to be, the trucks will will exit the site along this edge of the
That's
building.
going to be coming right by my bedroom. It's going to be kind of noisy. As it is now, there's a lot of people walking through there all hours of the night and yelling and screaming and trash and things. Right
Okay.
alongside the building now, between the building and the properties.
Yeah, there's kind of a weird little alleyway there that gets used,
And
I
it's a
think.
dirty
but-
mess.
Yeah, and we're hoping that this will open that up so
Are
it
they
will
going
be
to put
visible.
some kind of a wall up, or?
At this
What?
point, what we called for in discussions with the abutters in the area and planning staff was we called to make sure that the fence is repaired. There's a chain link fence up on top of the hill, and then it turns into, I think, a stockade fence somewhere up in this area here that we're going to repair and make sure that that fence is maintained.
Yeah, I'm
That-
the second house up.
So you're right
And
here.
we have there was a chain link fence up there.
Yeah, and it's in disrepair in some locations, and we're gonna replace that or repair it and make sure that that's back up to standard. So in that area there, we're probably going from somewhere in the 20-foot range to 40 feet away with the pavement. So the building will back off another 20 feet
But
from
there'll
your
still
property
be
line.
noisy trucks.
Well, I think that
Going
we
through
can
there.
talk about when those trucks do come by, but I think that we can try to minimize that effect on you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak in opposition? Yes, sir.
My name is Roland Roy. I'm an abutter, the biggest abutter. And those plans have been changed twice. The first time, it was one way. Now, they come up with a different plan, and they're going to they can refill. And that's my backyard. And there's one place, after they put up, they say they're going to put up that wall, is, I don't know just about where, but there's one section where the shortest point is, I think it's only about 2 feet, maybe 3 feet, I don't know. That's what they're talking about, the fence, because people are apt to come over that fence, jump in the yard or whatever. And that's what we're concerned about. Another thing that I'm concerned about, even though they say they're going to do all these things, I'm just wondering how it's going to look. I'm concerned about that. My wife is worse. She's right there. So we're very concerned about it. And I don't know. We've been living there for over 50 years, and we're coming up with these things. That's not the first time we come up with it. And we're still not happy, but what can I say? Is there anything else that I can say? Do you want to say anything, Janine? Right. You want to say anything? Okay. Well, like I say, I'm upset of the fact that their grade is going to be raised, and then it's going to be pitched down, and it's only going to be what, maybe 3 feet, I don't know, and that's too low to it. That's very easy to get into. Of course, you say you're going to put a fence there, but I don't know. I got to see it.
Mr. Roy, can I try to address those and see if
Beg
we
your pardon?
can I try to address your concerns and we can see if
Yeah,
we can.
go ahead.
The way that they're going to be able to make sure that that fence is in there is the details that we've given you are on the plan set. So it's required to be built as a part of the site plan approval if we get to that point. So it's not a handshake deal. It's in writing. It's in black and white. It's going to be done. The arborvitae are going to be planted. The fencing is going to be planted. It might be changed due to additional conversations that we have with you and your attorney, Mike. But the reason that they've changed is through discussions that we've had with each other. I attended one of the meetings with you and the Pappases, and we worked on where the wall would end on the Pappas property. And we walked over in here and talked about how the pavements even, it's on your land today, and we're going to be backing it off all the way 10 feet to meet the city requirements of green buffer. So I suggested, I think at that meeting, I said, what we'll do is we'll come out and we'll make a mock-up of the wall. We'll show you the fieldstone. We'll have you approve that fieldstone and the looks of it. And we actually, I think we looked across the street and I said, is that something that you would like, right across your front door? And I think you agreed that that was kind of what you were thinking in your head. But we'll make sure that
Yeah, after it's built, though, we have no choice.
well, no, but what we'll do is a mock-up, basically what we'll do is we'll have a section of wall, we'll build it, you know, in our parking lot, and you can look at what that will look like before it actually gets built in place. And this happens all the time in the construction industry. So we can make sure that you see what that finished product of the wall will look like, and then we'll put it on the property line. So I want to assure you that there's more, the board has more control over this than us just saying, well, you'll get your wall. It's on the plans, it's detailed exactly as we've given you the plans, and it will be built.
Yeah, the only thing is that fence that's gonna go up there, the whatever, 6-foot fence, the chain link?
The 4 foot,
How's that gonna
yep.
look? How's that gonna, it's not gonna be on my side, but we can
Yeah.
we still look at it.
We've talked about that. Mike and I just talked about it before the meeting, and I think that we can locate that fence on the other side of the arborvitae if that's your preference. I think for the most part, the most fence you're going to see is a couple feet in some areas where we have that grade change, but then then it will disappear. And in looking where your fence is today, the fence is really up into the branches of the trees you have in the backyard today. So I think we can get to a product that you'll be happy with, or I'm sure we can.
It's
And
too
we'll
late
continue.
afterwards, though, if we don't like it.
No, that's not true, basically, because they submitted a set of plans here that the city engineers have
Yeah.
seen, and we all have a copy of.
Yeah.
And if we approve these plans, and the city department engineer goes out, and they're not doing it the way they're supposed to, they stop the project. So they can't build it until it's been supervised by the city engineer people. And if they do put it up, and we find out later, we tell them to take it down, or they don't get an occupancy permit, which means they can't open up the store and they can't sell to their clients. So what happens is, city engineers will be on site, making sure that all these plans that this board has all read, and 8 departments in this city have read already, and have made comments to us on, if they're not done as required by this, then the site plan could be revoked at any point in time, and the project could not go forward.
I just hope, I'd like to have a copy of whatever they're gonna do.
We have the site plan, you can get it, we
Well,
have it at
I
staff
want a
here.
copy, I want a copy of
Just,
it.
you can come in and look at it anytime you like, the Division of Planning and Development, we can even give you a copy. There's no problem. Main thing is, what happens is, after tonight's public hearing, we might make changes to some of this. Okay?
Yeah.
These are plans given to us, these are comments that we received by 8 city departments, and for the public hearing, whatever input we hear, we might try to make changes, what we think can help better a project. So basically, if they do try to make them, sometimes we make an approval, sometimes we make a conditional approval, or sometimes we make a denial. But if we make any changes, then they would have to live up to those changes, or engineering could go out any time, stop the project, bring it back before us, we can vacate the approval, and they have nothing. So it's not just a handshake. As he said, engineering has to be followed through by all the guidelines through the city of Lowell if we approve this project. There's plenty of things in these plans that have been looked at in microscope, and they've discussed 3 different times, at least that I'm aware of, and I know other times that I'm not aware of, they've met with these city departments to make sure all the regulations are met in regards to the lighting, the drainage, the fire department, the police department, the engineering, the traffic, and all those concerns. So all those concerns that those department heads have, they wrote letters to all of us board members, whether they're in agreement, what they like, what they want to change. As Mr. Lamb said, when we started tonight, some of the comments that we've received, he already addressed, because he gets the same copy of the comments that we get. And when he started off tonight by saying, these are the things that your engineer had a question on, these are some of the things we already did already. So if they do, if we sign off on the plan, they have to do it the way we told them, or we stop the project. It isn't like it's too late, they got away with it, there's nothing we can do about it. That is not the case.
There's another, another thing, excuse me. Underneath that, on back of that wall, in fact, I think it's on my land. They've put pipes underneath there, and the water is supposed to drain in there, and they're supposed to maintain that.
Yeah, and they're gonna take any water on your land and drain it onto their property, which they do not have to do.
Well,
So you will have less water on your project. They're bringing it back away from your property. They're bringing the fence less visible from your property, and they're taking it away from your property. And they're making sure you have less water on your property.
well, I hope so.
I hope so, too. I mean, that's what Mr. Lamb said, and that's what the city engineer is going to go and check on site to make sure it's being done properly, or they'll stop the project.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Would anybody else like to speak in opposition of the project? Yes, sir.
My name is Ray Chandonnet. My wife and I live at 79 Willard Street, which is directly across the northern portion of the Demoulas property. I have two questions. First of all, concerning the delivery trucks, am I to understand that they will only enter from Willard Street and exit from the other side?
They're going to come in Willard Street and out Willard Street.
Well, that will be a relief, because I have noticed that the 18-wheelers make so much noise, not so much coming in, but leaving. It's, the trucks are empty and they rev up and we hear it through the night. The other question we have is there's presently an alleyway there for pedestrians to the mall, right next to the Pappas property. I think it's approximately 6 to 8 feet wide right now. And an awful lot of people use this, from the shopping mall to the houses down the street, the apartments. Is that going to continue? Is it going to be the same width?
Quickly, I can address that one quickly. We have I believe, 6 foot? A 6 foot wide concrete sidewalk which will access from Willard Street into the site.
And what's next to it? Right now it's a building.
The building will be moved further away from the Pappases. There's a little bit of service area and some employee parking in that location.
There'll be parking there?
Pardon me?
There will be some parking?
Yeah, some parking, a small amount of
And
parking.
how will they access?
From the front.
Not from Willard?
No, there's no new, this is the existing.
No entrance whatsoever except for the delivery trucks?
Except for that entrance there remains, and it's going to become a one-way in.
Has any thought ever been given to putting a sidewalk?
We are proposing a sidewalk along our frontage on Willard Street.
Well, that would be a blessing. An awful lot of people are using Willard Street, and there are no sidewalks.
Yeah.
And, we've been there 40 years. And by the way, we're right across from the Roys. They have a beautiful property. They take care of it meticulously, and so do the Pappas. It would be a shame to see that ruined with a wall that would be disgraceful. But in any case, we have, like I said, my wife and I, approximately 300 feet of Willard Street. We have 2 houses, and my driveway faces that back alley. I call it a back alley. What we see in that back alley is unbelievable. We just ignore it because these people would come across and damage our property. We don't dare call the police unless it's really bad. But the Pappases can tell you stories, and so could we, about that narrow. Demoulas years ago tried several things. They had put lights up. They were knocked down in a few days by people. And lately it's been quiet, but we do see an awful lot of things going on, drinking, name it, okay? And what made it worse is that several years ago they added 3 stores, Sal's Pizza, cleaning place, and a laundry, right in back of the Pappas property. That was a shock to all of us. Those buildings are disappearing, I assume?
Yes.
Good. So basically, these are the concerns we have as abutters across the street from Demoulas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else like to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. At this point in time, I'll turn it over. Before I turn over to some of the board members, the Division of Planning and Development have any comments that they want to address before the board, before I turn over to board members for any questions or concerns? Aaron, do you have anything particularly?
No, there's not a whole lot new. I did get an email from Mr. Lamp this morning with some of the changes that he already showed on the plan and some of the requests that the neighborhood had asked for that they were willing to provide. I can offer this to the chairman here. You can read through them right now, but if you want to go
You
through
can
it,
address
right?
them if you like
Okay.
this briefly, or...
There was discussion and comments from my department about stamping the crosswalks with a brick kind of stamp veneer on the two major curb cuts from Bridge Street, just to provide a better designation between the pedestrian and vehicular access, just to provide a little safer interaction between those two, as well at the ends of what they're calling the throat. And you can see Jim's pointing them out right now. The email that Jim sent to me is also pointing out that there's a crosswalk in front of Walgreens that they're willing to add that stamped concrete as well. There's going to be a staircase leading from Bridge Street directly to the front of the Walgreens to provide a little bit more direct access for the pedestrian. It's not showing on the plan, but something they're willing to add to it. They point out, Jim was pointing out that the architecture of the Walgreens is a work in progress. You've received comments from me on some of our concerns about that, and that they're willing to continue to work on that as a condition if the board feels it's worth approving tonight, and working with DPD going forward. Addresses the screening issue that's been discussed so far. Mentioned signage that's been added to the most southern curb cut, pointing out that that's only for service access. Additional plantings along the 11 parking space on the north, I guess that's the northeastern side of the property. That's already on the plan. And then that they're happy to submit a signage plan when that's being finalized to DPD for our recommendation, something that we could bring back to the planning board at a later date once that's finalized on their side. And then the Market Basket has agreed to install an invisible electric fence to lock shopping cart wheels at the site boundaries. This was one of the major concerns of the neighborhood group, was that currently the baskets that end up off-site and are kind of unsightly and cause quite a problem. So this is something that they're willing to do. And then also that's showing on the plan, there's an area, a rumple strip by one of the throats going in, that the turning radius needed to remain large to allow the truck traffic through, but we wanted to make sure that there was some traffic calming for the cars as they move through the site. So they agreed to add, I believe, cobblestones or a cobble rumble strip kind of texture, so that it would slow vehicular traffic. It'd be a wide turn, and so we just wanted to make sure that the cars weren't taking that corner too fast. And they show that actually on plan. So I just wanted to bring it.
Okay, thank you. Not yet, nope, sorry. Anything else? Anything further?
And that's it for now.
Okay. Can I just see that list? Can you have a second? Just pass it down. So I'm going to pass it through the board members as we're all talking, have a chance to look it over. Joe, I'll let you stop and look at that. Okay. At this point in time, we'll turn over to any questions or concerns any of the board members have. Mr. Lockhart, you want to go first? Any questions you have?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment first and applaud the neighborhood group for, showing the initiative here to go out and dig into this project and give us your opinions and feedback on it. Whether you're right or wrong here is immaterial. It's the initiative that we appreciate, and the information that helps us make a better decision that is very important, so thank you.
Okay.
I do have a few comments.
Sure.
One, Mr. Gauthier intimated that there was a reduction in parking from the present plan, and that reduction, an increase in parking at the expense of green space in the parking lot. And I'd just like to get your comment on that in terms of maybe number of parking spaces, quantities of trees, and just to get your feeling for it.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to try to do that. I think
Just in
first-
general, just the
The first thing I'd like to repeat is that we're increasing green space by 23,000 square feet, over half an acre. So any perception that we're increasing pavement or increasing impervious, it might be perception, but it's not reality. The existing parking lot today, as I had mentioned previously, has roughly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 trees. And what we're proposing, I can just read off the list. On the red maples alone, we've got 15. Bradford pears, 39, which are a beautiful conical flowering tree. White pines, 41. And then you go into the smaller, we have the evergreen and whatnot. One of the things that Mr. Gauthier had asked for was more flowers on the street, so we added 163 daylilies along the street as ground cover amongst the trees. We are before the ZBA for a variance on what is, I think that we translate the regs a little bit different than staff, but in essence, there's some language in the zoning ordinance that says in contiguous islands, you need to have trees within 50 feet of each other.
Right.
Now, we look at that and we say, okay, if you have a long island such as this, you have to have at least a tree every 50 feet. We meet that clearly. The way that we're addressing the variance is assuming that you need a tree every 50 feet throughout the parking lot as a grid work. And when you have 60-foot bays, it's very hard to meet that without additional islands. And I sat down today, and I'm probably not keeping this as short as you want, but it means you need an island every 4 spaces. So you have 4 spaces island, 4 spaces island, 4 spaces island. It becomes very onerous to try to meet. And we would not meet the parking count that Market Basket needs in order to redevelop the store. So what we've proposed is tried to spread out parking trees within the parking lot, but we've given these long, much wider, 15-foot wide, 15 or 12? 12? 12-foot wide in here, and then there's a sidewalk on one side, these linear islands that we're planting very heavily, and then planting kind of in a patchwork quilt across the parking lot to spread those shade trees. So it's much improved over what's there today, but meeting the letter of the ZBR, the requirements of the regulations, we fall a little short. But we do meet the overall tree count required per square foot of pavement required by the city.
Right. Yeah, no, that's significantly more. And just as a comment, you know, if there are excess spaces there, and I think there are parking spaces, from personal experience, that can be a very dangerous parking lot, you know that, with people moving around and the current way it's laid out. So a few extra spaces in there would just improve the safety of the whole thing. Another question, or a concern really, there's a couple of neighbors here that spoke up regarding truck traffic and noise. And I'm wondering if there's not more that we can do here to protect the neighbors from any potential disturbances in that regard. And, you know, maybe you don't want to discuss them in detail tonight, but would you be willing to work with DPD and staff in just addressing that issue so that...
Absolutely. You know, if a fencing, rather than replacing the chain link, if it needs to be more of something along the lines of a stockade fence, then we'd be more than happy to work.
Just something to alleviate their concern,
Yeah.
I think would...
Yeah.
All right, we'll just hold that for now. And just one other question regarding bus stops and bus. Have you accommodated a bus stop in here?
We've got some ideas of where it makes sense, and we've had discussions with the neighborhood groups as well as staff, and I think we're waiting for a response from transportation. You want to jump in, Aaron?
Yeah, I can answer somewhat of that question. I've traded voicemails with the folks at Lowell Regional Transit Authority to discuss with them right now how the bus interacts with that shopping district. And right now, I believe the bus just goes north and south on Bridge Street, doesn't stop in the parking field or in front of the market basket. My understanding is that they're pretty flexible with the routing of the bus and would be willing to route a bus to go on site to drop or pick people off right in front of the market basket. So it seems like it's something that can be pretty easily addressed with LRTA. I think they were open to having a bus go in north and south on both directions. So,
All right, I just think it's a very important issue. There's a lot of people, in the neighborhood that depend on a bus. And I
We can
think-
go on record and agree.
Yeah, we
once
want to
come with a
accommodate that
location,
in
we'll
a nice,
accommodate
safe
it.
environment. That's all.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think it makes sense maybe to go counterclockwise just so the door is on the curbside.
Yeah.
I think
That would
we
be
would
beautiful.
encourage to have the bus stop at the building, just so if it's a rainy day, you don't have people having to move from the building with their baggage out to the street.
you're on board.
So,
Well, I know a lot of your other sites do that.
Yeah.
Not just in Lowell, but other cities around. They pull right up where the overhead is, and the people stay dry, then they walk and jet right on the bus. They do it in
Absolutely.
Lawrence, they do it in other cities. Right.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lockhart. Any other board members at this time? Mr. Fischett, do you have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, first I'd like to start out with just some comments relative to the existing site and what's being proposed. Currently, if you walk the site, I think two locations, on to the far right and to the far left, what currently exists, and Mr. Shannon, I think, mentioned that pathway is it's almost like an alleyway, and I can see where dubious activity could take place over there. I think by opening that up, the way you have it proposed here, will certainly make that safer as well. Also, as well, I'm walking on the left side of that building. Once again, it's an alleyway with woods. I could see kids partying there on a Friday or a Saturday night. So I think by opening that up, again, I think is going to alleviate any problems that existed there as well. Relative to the landscaping and open space, looking at that current site, and it reflects what went up in the 60s and 70s. It is what it is. And you look at the trees that are there, and I counted, if you count the trees along the building, you're 15 trees, I think, right now, with what's along the building on the left-hand side, but they're not very attractive. It's not laid out very well. You're looking at, and I was looking, with particular care, because this is an arterial road, it's a gateway to the city. It's the transition from a regional retail to the neighborhood business district, to the residential area as well. Trying to handle it in a delicate way. We really, design of the buildings was so important in the neighborhood districts, and then you transform into the residential portion of that neighborhood, and then you get right into this retail, regional retail. So how this transitions and how that looks really says a lot to people coming in to the city from that area. When I look at what you're proposing here, and I don't profess to be an arborist, and so I did a little research on some of the trees. You look in the Bradford pear, I guess, obviously, you're looking at 39 Bradford pears, and, those are considered some of the best trees for urban design and landscape, and that's 39 of those trees, and 15 red maples. I think most people can identify with the red maples, and 13 little leaf linden. Did a little research on that as well. Obviously, a nice tree as well. Eastern white pine, 41 eastern white pine. And then we get into some of the smaller plants, and I think that certainly from what we're looking at right now, we're talking about quite an improvement. And I can appreciate, because I think anybody can tell you when we have proposals come before us regarding the landscape design for parking area, we really try to stick to that, but I understand the challenge in this particular case. And part of it is, it really has to do with how this appears from the road. The streetscape is very important, and I know you've got the line of trees. I believe looking at this, you're looking to preserve those red maples that are along where the Walgreens is located. Now, if I look at the elevation, you mentioned some elevation changes, and I was having, to be honest with you, with the plans that I had, I was having a little hard time trying to get a handle on that Walgreens location, because it looks like you're going to keep the 4-foot drop that's currently exists with those, the red maples, yep, exactly. And then you're gonna drop down into the parking lot, but then you basically, that's your elevation, and you're gonna bring up the back portion with, Mr. Roy has some concern there, is that?
After we had the meeting, again, with the Roys and the Pappases, I tried to drop the grade another foot on the backside and the wall side. So in places, I dropped it a foot to 6 inches just to get that grade even further down. And that's reflected on these plans.
Okay, okay.
So you can see what we did was, as you go across, we had to hold the service doors in the rear, but then as soon as we got to the corner that's chamfered off there, we tried to drop as quickly as possible, and then make sure we didn't drain everything to the wall. You do want to have it drain to the curb line for
Right.
snow and other melt, but we dropped that a foot in some places.
I mean, I certainly have my suggestions on the fencing, and perhaps with the shrubs that you're going to have there, even the green vinyl may blend in with the plantings as well, but I think that needs to be worked out, obviously.
Agreed.
And if I heard that correctly, then you've agreed to the stamped crosswalks, Walgreens. Is there a representative from Walgreens here with you at all this evening?
No, there is not.
Okay. I'm assuming the negotiations with DPD and you, I mean, basically you're going back to Walgreens and saying...
Yeah, I guess the way it went was the first plan we got, we didn't even submit. We worked with Walgreens to get it to a point, and I went on tour basically in the 3 states. I went to Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts, and looked at about 15 Walgreens, and I found one that I thought was appropriate for this location that I sent some pictures to Aaron to. It's located in Epping, New Hampshire. And it's got kind of a mill feel to it. It's got some granite-looking pieces, and what we've asked them to do is to give us a facade, which they did. We submitted plans, but they were black and white, so it's really hard to get a feel for the color and the texture of the building. But we're working with them. They've agreed verbally that they would match the brick to our building, and the plan that I see is made great strides. I think I shared the original plan with Aaron. I told him not to show anybody.
Is this the latest?
Yes, that's
Okay,
the latest.
okay.
And if they use the details that there are very similar to the Epping store, I think that everybody's going to be very happy. So I have a comfort level that I think that they're getting to there, and from the language that we've talked about, I think they're working on it. They just couldn't get it done for this meeting. We're hoping to see those plans within a week or so.
Because that's a crucial part to the site.
Absolutely.
And we talked about, it really marks the transition from the regional retail to we start getting to the neighborhood, business neighborhood, residential areas. So I think that's crucial, and especially, and we talked about possibly turning the building, and you know, the concern was, what is that going to look? The main concern is, what is that going to look like from the street?
Yeah,
And
you
that's
can see for the
concern.
most part they put glass on the street side. That was a big concern of the neighborhood group, to make sure that even though that's not necessarily their front of the building, it had to be presented as a front on Bridge Street.
But you feel, I'm sorry, you feel confident working with DPD that,
Absolutely.
okay, and I certainly would be looking to make a condition that would have to be, continue to work that through with DPD and come back to us for final approval, if we move forward on something like
I
that.
assume that since the comments were fairly positive regarding the other stores, that I think we know what they're looking for, and I think we can address those concerns.
Okay. Now, the plans that we're looking at, that entrance that you mentioned would be service access. You're showing a stop sign to come out. Can you,
Yeah, that's for vehicles that will be using the pharmacy if they want to leave the site at that
so they'll
point.
be able to exit from there?
Right.
But they would not be able to enter, is that?
Yeah, and it's one way on the other side of the building. It's one way, so no one else can get to that point
Okay.
unless they're going through the pharmacy
Okay,
drive-through.
all right, okay. And if you elect
That's
to,
been a very
and you
minor-
have the option of exiting
You could go
out
back
here as
around
well,
if
if you don't want
you
to.
want to come back. You know, you want to drop off a prescription, go shop, come back and pick it up, you can stay on site. You don't have to circulate off site.
Okay. And then, for my own curiosity, if that site today, there's a sign that swings under the overhang that says bus stop.
The bus stop, yeah, it's right in front of the.
So the bus does go in there, is that?
I assumed that was a bus stop.
And there's a bench there, and
It's a place for people to wait.
every time I've gone, and now whether they have to make a dash across the parking lot to the bus on Bridge Street,
Just heard it.
I can't say because I haven't used it, but I had always assumed
Okay.
that it says a bus stop in some.
right, and there's a bench under there, and there's always somebody sitting there with their groceries when I've been checking out the site. So I'm assuming that there is service that goes in there, and I think it would be important to accommodate that. And I think from the neighborhood's perspective, and every time I've gone to inspect the site, there's actually people walking to the site. And that I want to comment as well. Right now, if you enter this site where the Walgreens site location is being proposed, it's just white lines that designate a walking area, and there's no protection, and you're walking in the parking lot. So now what we're doing is we're creating sidewalks throughout the site with the granite curbing, elevating that, and creating a much safer situation. Also, I have to say Willard Street. I've driven down Willard Street thousands of times in my life. I never realized until I walked it that there was no sidewalk there. When you're walking along Willard Street, you're on the same level as the road with no protection. So you're to be applauded for putting a sidewalk in that location. That's huge. From a safety perspective, I constantly see people pushing baby carriages along that strip. So I mean, that's going to be a much safer situation as well. And you've agreed again to am I correct, you agreed to the stamped concrete within the site as well?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not at every crosswalk. I can point out each one that was agreed to, and if you have further comment, stamped at each of these locations, and when stamped on the main entrance points here, and then the additional one that's not shown at this point is this one. That's where we stand. The stairwell is shown. The stairs are on the current plan.
I see that.
We just omitted the crosswalk.
Okay. And relative to recycling, and actually we have something on our agenda regarding LEED certification and something we're moving towards, but it's interesting, and I think it's very relevant in today's world, but any consideration relative to that, and from your experience, based on what you have laid out here, is that something that would be
Market
you'd be able to
Basket,
incorporate?
I can only speak for Market Basket, but Market Basket does many, I guess they would be considered small things, but I guess when you do many small things, they add up into something significant. They separate their trash. They have cardboard in one of their compactors is strictly for cardboard. They recycle materials from the building. They use natural light when they can. They use, sometimes they will do solar. Each building is different depending on what they feel is economical and works financially for them, because it's all about trying to provide a product that is less expensive.
As far as disposing of trash, can you talk a little bit about that as far as how this will be?
Two locations. One here is a compactor, and then one over here.
And then relative to truck deliveries, and I know that was a concern with the noise. Talk a little bit about time of deliveries. Is this typically done in the evening? Is it done during the day? Is it done on weekends?
I don't have a real good answer. I would assume that they would be on the same schedule they are today, unless there was a comment from the board or from the abutters that certain times don't work. Because the store has deliveries today, that they would probably stay on the same routes. And I don't personally have knowledge to the actual times of delivery.
And if I caught, I don't know if I heard that correctly, relative to perhaps trying to create a sound buffer, did you say you were receptive to putting a stockade fence where the chain link is on top of that hill?
Right, if that was something that the abutters felt it was more desirable than the chain link, because we're going to be doing work up on that property line, and if a stockade fence would be, more of a visual, and it would definitely work a little better for sound than chain link.
Sure, yeah.
That we'd be willing to continue. The stockade fence today, for the most part, is along this entire line, and then this is, for the most part, chain link.
If that's something the abutters would be would welcome, I think that would personally visually help to screen some of that, and as well as muffle the sound.
can we start with the fence and then we can, is the fence?
Why don't we
would
start
you
back with
prefer?
Mr. Fischett, sir, okay, Mr. Lamson?
I'm
Stay with
sorry.
Mr. Fischett.
Yeah, no, I just...
We'd be willing to do that.
Yep, okay, very
We'd be
good.
willing to do that.
Very good. I think, Mr. Chairman, for the most part, again, just to sum up, I think when you look at the current site, and again, it's just a reflection of what was built back in the day, this is an improvement for the site, I think visually and I think functionally, and even as a safer site to maneuver within the confines of this property as well. So that's all I have to say at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, any questions, concerns?
Sure,
Jerry, that was that email that we received and we're passing down slowly, so if you have a chance to look it over, you have any questions, I'll come back to you, okay? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Lockhart and Mr. Frechette did a pretty good job of covering the high points, but I have a few things I wanted to talk about. I also wanted to thank the neighbors and the neighborhood group for coming out today, as the Centerville Neighborhood Group always does, to make sure we understand the issues that relate to the neighborhood so that we can make sure everybody's satisfied with the project. And clearly, this is a project that is going to be a good thing, I think, in overall for the neighborhood. We're looking at a site now that's got vacancies on it, and it's pretty much an eyesore because it was built the way we built those things back many years ago. So this is an opportunity for us now to take this property and to turn it into something that we can all be more satisfied with, and it's going to work well for everybody. And I think we're addressing a lot of those issues. Excuse me. That said, I always hate to see us varying or offering a variance on our landscape and open space clause. But this is not the first time that people have come to us and said it's very vague and difficult to understand and impossible to comply with. Maybe we should take a look at that and see if we can come up with something that is going to make more sense for us going forward. I can say that it looks like you've, one of the first components of this clause here is the open space portion of our zoning code, is that you have 5% of your gross parking area landscaped. I think that you've achieved that. At the
12%
right.
open space interior.
Yeah, the way I
parking.
see it, well, the whole site is 387,000 square feet. 5% of that would obviously be 19,000 square feet, and at 25,000, you're over that. One thing that does concern me, though, is that a lot of the landscaping is on the border of the property. One thing I always hate to see is a parking lot where you look in and it's just a sea of pavement. Even if there are trees around the border, sometimes just having so much pavement in one space really is an eyesore. I know there's parking lots around the city that I kind of scratch my head and say, why didn't we do more with that? So I want to make sure we don't fall into that situation here. And looking at the layout of the parking lanes now, I'm wondering, is there any way you can do a little more with landscape islands in there, like maybe even 2 per lane? Because it does seem as though that there's plentiful parking. And to Mr. Gauthier's point, is there any way we can just make sure that we don't fall into that situation where we have that sea of concrete? And I also think that having 2 per lane helps with the traffic flow as well. Right now, by the way, the traffic flow on that site is atrocious. I mean, it's just a free-for-all. The way the parking is, the lanes are set up here is really going to help that situation. But I think potentially having a little bit more landscaping, like you do on the left lane here, next to the other retail store, there you have two. To me, that looks like it's going to be a better situation. Is that something you could consider?
I think we can consider anything. The issue that we have is typically when Market Basket and downtown, very urban sites are different than sites that no one can walk to. They typically like to see a 5 per 1,000 ratio with 66,000 square feet. That's 300 some odd spaces without even considering additional tenancies. And so the feedback that I've gotten, I have asked these questions, and what we did do is very early on in talking to Aaron, what we did is we cleverly, where the cart corrals are, those are counted here, is we tried to take a chunk out of the middle and give a 10 by 10 area that would be able to sustain trees in between those cart corrals, so we can get some more green in those areas that doesn't remove parking spaces. If we could come to I think an agreement that 6 more spaces, and we come up with an agreement where they should be used as green spaces, or 8 spaces, so I can go back with a number and say this is what's agreed to, rather than some open-ended. You know, every 2 spaces is a 40 by 10 or 40 by 9 landscaped island, which could sustain 2 trees. I think that's something that we can work with. So I don't want to say no. I want to try to address your concerns. But I do know that every space, at this point, they've given up half an acre every space, even though we have increased spaces. This store, they're anticipating that people are going to stay longer and shop longer because it's going to have just more services.
Sure.
So that they would like to have more at their front door, where there's only 220 in the center bay, which is really the market basket shop.
I see. Yeah.
So if the board would request that maybe we do 4 more islands and come up with an agreement with staff of where they should be placed, I think that's something that's doable, and that would be losing 8 more spaces.
I think that would be reasonable, an effort to try and get as close as we can to the standards we've laid out here in the zoning code. Okay. How about the lighting? We didn't talk about the lighting at all on the site, that I recall anyway. Could you talk about the lighting?
As much as I personally can. It's been designed by Lowell Central Electric. They do most of the market basket sites. They're using a new pole that is not so much, a lot of people refer to them as shoeboxes on poles. These are a little bit more smooth, they're rounded. They have a good cutoff lighting so that we are not spilling over any light onto the adjacent properties. The light photometrics plan is included in the set. We've added, there was discussions about ornamental lighting along the street with both, I believe the board might have talked about it, but also the neighborhood groups. And in discussions with staff, I think we reached agreement that it might not be a downtown site where you have this ornamental lighting such as is right around this area, but because it has buildings right behind it, and it works really well with the sidewalks. When you have a wide open space and you have this parking lot lighting, the effect of those lights might be lost. So what we did was we've added bollard lighting at each of the crossings, that will light up each of the curb locations. So I believe there's 2 at most and 1 at others, so that there will be some features there. There was also, Conrad had asked for some outlets out there for any future needs. If there was something the city wanted to have electricity to light up trees or do something, that we will add that to the plan. So we've agreed to do those outlets, and the bollard lighting will allow us to add those locations. So in a nutshell, it's fairly typical parking lot lighting. It's newer cutoff features will allow for minimal spillover into other properties, and we've added some small pedestrian features at the crossings on Bridge Street.
Aaron, will you work with whoever's providing the lighting here to make sure it's adequate and doesn't provide spillover into the properties, but the property is still adequately lit?
I mean, yeah, looking at the photometric plan that they provided, it looks pretty much like it's going to do what he's saying, that it's all downward directed. They have on the plan, you can see actually what the illumination is at the ground plane, so you can get a feel for what impacts it's going to be. As it's designed now, it seems like it's pretty adequate for lighting the parking and not providing any impacts on the neighbors. Just that, I guess the only outstanding question is whether or not it's the right place for Victorian decorative lighting in a place where you have a parking lot behind it. something that, I don't know if we're
Very
really
good.
for or against, we just don't know what it's going to look like.
Okay. It sounds like you're working in good faith with the neighbors to try and make sure the fencing and the walls and the bushes meet everybody's requirements. I'd like to see that a condition of the approval, that we make sure that you continue to work with the neighbors to satisfy their concerns. But I think it sounds like you're heading in that direction. Also, the traffic on the back of the property. Now, with this rear entrance, will cars be able to come in there as well?
There's no way to enforce that, but thanks. There's no way to enforce that, but we're gonna try to. It's gonna be signed, and hopefully it's human nature to probably do the easiest thing available. So I assume there will be some car traffic, but it's very circuitous to get to that location, and we're hoping that most people will use the front entrance.
Right. But it clearly will be one way, so it'll only be inbound traffic. You had put some traffic calming cobblestones, I guess, in that corner to keep the trucks or the cars from going too fast around there. I was thinking maybe it would be a good idea to do something similar on the north side of the property there, alongside the building, so that, you know, people aren't, you know, as you come around that corner and enter into the crowded parking lot.
Somewhere.
Yeah,
like
someplace.
Just a rumble strip or something.
Rumble strip or a speed bump or something like that. Does that make any sense, or am I?
With the neighbors concerned about noise, maybe a rumble strip is the wrong name.
Yeah, maybe a speed bump is better. My concern, you know, there was discussion about, you know, diesel fumes and that sort of thing. If we could keep the pace very slow coming around there, I think it might address some of the noise and other issues that come along with the traffic.
Could you give me some time to maybe work on that one with Aaron? Because
Sure.
I know you don't want to do speed bumps because that's just going to bang. That's going to bang the truck. I think what we've got to do is maybe try to have better signage. You know, maybe if you even put signage here that said, you know, no outlet.
Yeah.
Because then people will think, you know, it's again perception rather than reality. But if we add those signs, that might really keep people from using that area.
Okay. My concern is trying to keep the traffic as slow as possible coming around there. Okay. Do you have a way of limiting truck access? Like if, you know, if they said the trucks couldn't access the property after a certain time in the evening or on Sundays?
We're very effective at our own trucks. Sometimes the vendors, because they don't have the same drivers all the time, but when it's Market Basket's trucks, they're very good at doing that. It's the individual vendors, like the breads and the milks and things like that, that come in that we would have to work a little harder on. But yeah, we're fairly effective at trying to keep people to certain store hours.
But that's something you're open to, trying to restrict hours on truck access?
It's a fairly common practice
Okay.
on sites that are adjacent to residential areas.
Okay. Jerry mentioned the sidewalks on Willard Street. That's great. Somebody brought up the idea of sprinklers. Not tonight, but in one of the CNAG's note that they gave us here on some of the grass areas.
Yeah.
Is that something?
Actually, one of the things we've tried to do to address the engineer's comment regarding runoff is that we're capturing the roof. I mean, this is kind of a green thing that we're doing that I forgot about.
Yeah.
We're capturing the roof runoff from the Market Basket, putting in a storage tank, and we're going to run the irrigation off of that. And when that runs dry, we will, you know, switch over to city water. But for the most part, we're recycling the clean roof water and we're irrigating the site. So
Great. That's on our lead checklist that we have later tonight, I think.
so
Great. Thank you.
that's a newer change, and that's going to be taken care of.
Okay, and the last thing I had was, I didn't quite understand what you're doing with the carts to address the issue of carts leaving the site and ending up all over the place.
I believe it occurs at the acre. Is that what they have is that there's a battery on the cart and there's a wheel lock. Once it's almost like an invisible dog fence. Once the cart passes that line, that underground cable, it sends a signal to it and it locks up the wheels. So you know, I've actually seen people leaving skid marks pushing these things off site, but it does deter people from taking the carts. And one of the issues the local groups had was that there are carts left all over the neighborhood, and this should be a very good step towards keeping the carts on site.
Great, that sounds terrific. All right, thank you.
Just to comment on that further, Walgreens also does that on different sites?
We will request that they do that.
They do. I mean, other sites I've been to, Walgreens has on the side of their project. I've seen them now more and
That's a
more.
good
That
point.
they're doing the same thing with their locking carts, but it's indicated the other Market Basket on Broadway Street has the locking carts as well. The Hannaford in the city, they have the locking carts as well, so a lot more of these, the bigger plazas are addressing that issue, which is nice to see. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Claremont?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I'd like to congratulate the applicant. I think it was an excellent job putting these plans together, and thanks also for working with the neighborhood group. Centerville Group always does their homework, gave us a nice little package of photographs and all sorts of things to look at and consider, and I think you did a good job addressing most of their concerns. Certainly, the issues of the trees were dealt with, increasing it from the dozen or so that you have now to 80 or 90 will be a great improvement. Crosswalks have been dealt with. The issue of the bus has been dealt with. The architecture for the pharmacy is something that's still in discussion, and dealing with the card issue. All these things were important, of course, to the Centerville Group, and I think that they've been dealt with. Just a couple of quick points, following up on some of the points my colleagues raised. The invisible fence, now that prevents the cart from coming off at any point from the site?
Typically, what they would do is it would be a continuous line around the site, or what they could do is if they knew that the curbs were too big to jump, because all the curbing here is vertical granite, so it is going to be difficult to lift the cart up and get it through a landscaped area. So what they might do is they might put it on the sidewalk across each one of these entrances. But to be sure, the best thing to do would be a continuous line.
I think that's an important consideration, because they end up in the canals, and I'm sure that they're quite expensive, so it's great to keep them on site. Could you discuss the signage that's proposed for the property?
Unfortunately, I have not seen a sign package yet, and right now the sign that's out there, there's been some discussions of whether you keep that sign because of its interesting look, but we have to come back and talk to staff, and probably I think the agreement was that we come back before you with specific sign packages. We do not have a proposal before you at this point for building and for building and site.
Figure out whether or not we had gotten anything in writing from the fire department. I couldn't see anything in the notes, and I don't think we had anything over here. Do you recall getting anything from the fire department?
My name is Rick Freiberg with TEC. We're the engineers for the project. And I actually met with Captain Weber probably back in June, I think, prior to our first submittal. And his major concerns have been reflected on this plan. He likes some of the aspects involved with looping the water lines. So there's going to be a connection between the Willard Street and Bridge Street water lines. And also the location of our fire hydrants he was agreeable to as well. We gave him a chance to offer input, and I think he actually may have written an email to Aaron just informing him that we had spoken, and that in general he liked our concept.
He was okay with the traffic flow and whatnot. One of the neighbors had expressed a concern about the diesel from the delivery trucks, and just from my own education, when the delivery trucks are delivering their goods, the trucks generally shut off at that point. Are they just running when they're in and out?
Yeah, I believe there's a state code that prevents trucks from idling.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't have a couple of comments. I think my fellow board members covered everything. As indicated, I knew the packages did go out to all the city departments. We did receive the comments back. I believe you addressed the ones by the city engineer. We have approval by the fire department. We have approval by the wastewater department. We've had approval by all the other departments. And also we heard from the Division of Planning and Development. I think you did a good job in addressing all the issues. I think the Neighborhood Association did a good job by giving us the packet with their concerns. As indicated, I noticed that you addressed a lot of these concerns on your plan. I think you did a lot of hard work on this. I think when this project is completed, it's going to look a lot nicer than the project that's out there now. I know the city of Lowell has been working very hard for the last 3 or 4 years to try to get somebody to occupy that Ames site. I know we tried to get different retailers in there. They've looked at it, and they just couldn't get any takers. So obviously, I think the way you're addressing this issue, by moving that out, putting in what you have, and dress up the whole site, and meeting the concerns that the board members have addressed, as well as all the city department heads, I think it's going to come out and look a nice project. I think you did a very good job in presenting the project and trying to meet all the concerns. And I want to thank everybody for the input, and I have no further comments. Thank you. At this point in time, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the site plan with the number of conditions. I think the conditions that we discussed primarily were set forth on the email from Mr. Lamp to Aaron, dated August 18, 2008. So I'll just go through them quickly, just so my colleagues know as well. Right. Stamped crosswalks added to the plans for all locations requested. The Walgreens architecture is a work in progress. Conditional approval requiring architectural elevations to Walgreens store to be reviewed by staff. The screen retaining wall detail has been modified to address additional abutter comments. The 48-inch fence, black vinyl coated, is now adjacent to the wall on the site side to minimize impacts to the abutters. Some things that you've added to the plan are here. The signage has been added to the plan to restrict access to the site. The additional plantings, evergreens, have been added to the plans in the vicinity of the 11 spaces to the north end of the site. There was an agreement to submit the site signage plan to DPD for their recommendations and presentation to the planning board. Again, you'll install the invisible electric fence to lock the shopping carts, and the rumble strip shown on the plans at the location discussed. In addition to that, I certain we have an okay from the fire department. We should have something in writing from them as far as the fire department approval. And I think there was something else, Mr. Gendron, if you want to set that forth in terms of the parking lot.
Sure, thank you. I had a few here that I thought we should specifically reference. Add 4 landscape islands, sacrificing 8 spaces in the parking lot. I'd work with neighbors to develop a satisfactory barrier on property. That's the fence and the wall or the arborvitaes. Replace the chain link fence on the north side of the property with stockade fence, and then work to restrict truck access to daytime access.
That's fine.
I'll second the motion.
Any further comments from board members? Mr. Lockhart?
Yeah, I just did reference the fence on the north side. Just like the word noise abatement put in there somewhere. The noise on the north side for truck traffic.
I think that can be done by the type of fence you use.
Yeah, whatever it is, but let's
I
get
think the
that,
stockade will definitely cut down with the noise than the chain link.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
let's get
absolutely.
those
It's
words
an
in the
improvement.
You know,
motion.
so I mean, I think with what Mr. Jim and Mr. Lockhart are getting at is basically with the stockade fence instead of the chain link, that's going to cut down on the noise pollution. So that they can address that noise with that type of stockade fence.
Yeah, or whatever.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
And the speed as well.
Yes.
Regarding that, I do think we can work further with the applicant to try to see what we could do to slow trucks and minimize impacts on the north side, although I would caution you all that I think a solid fence is probably one of the more effective ways to address the noise issues just about any. I am concerned that there are some good suggestions to slow trucks, like a speed hump or a rumble strip or something like that, but each of those things could create more noise than it would reduce in the process of slowing trucks. But if you want a condition that we can all take a closer look at that and see if there's something we haven't thought of here tonight, we'd be happy to work with the applicant to do that. I just think that the fencing, a solid fence is an easier solution to controlled noise, particularly if it's in the midst of a pretty well-treed buffer area. Anything that sort of bumps or noise shifts around the trucks, especially when they're empty, may create a lot of rattle. I know the neighbors on Willard Street were saying they used to get some of that rattle when the trucks came out of the driveway. I don't want to take that problem and move it over to the other side. If there's something that can sort of slowly and steadily have them move along at a reasonable speed through that space, it would probably be the least noise impact of what's there. Going through the list of conditions, I think you covered just about everything you talked about. There's one question we had at DPD. I'm not sure if the size of the underground storage tank to support the roof drainage is clarified on the plan, and if it is, or I just want to make sure that's adequate to collect the roof drainage, and I don't know if you settled that as you did.
We can give you the gallonage and what we assume, the storage is, how many operations of the irrigation system that it will hold.
Yeah.
We won't need it in years like this, though.
Yeah, no, I certainly, we're not trying to design for, 15, 25-year storms in a summer. Just, something that provides some impact so that as we could report back to the city engineer and back beyond that to say that we have done everything practicable to address the drainage as we have been discussing, that would be ideal.
Typically, what those systems are, the first inch or something like that, so we can work at finding out what the storage is needed for an inch off the roof or something along those lines.
So yeah, maybe if we go an inch off the roof, size it to address an inch off the roof, and that's our number, and we can agree with that, and that will meet the basic standard. Just want to make sure that there was nothing else that we had discussed. My preference on the Walgreen design is, if it pleases the board, is to have DPD and the applicant work together on it and have us report back to you with something at a point in time when we have something for your review and approval that will address it. I think we're a lot closer along, but we are concerned about making sure that street front edge and the way that some of the trash pickup and the side of the building and everything along there all works together. It would be ideal if we could bring that back.
Yeah, I believe we got that in the email here, the Walgreens architect and work and the conditional approval to bring it back before us.
Mm-hmm.
Have a meet with you first, okay?
And same thing with the sign package. We would
Right.
have them
The sign
bring
package will
something
come back to us.
you, and we would work on that.
Okay.
And we will work, our office and our design planner will work on identifying how to address the 8 parking spaces most effectively, and we'll make sure that those end up on the plan. I think the last remaining issue, as it is on the plan, we have a detail right now for the design of this wall fence arborvitae detail on the back of the properties along Willard Street, and certainly what would probably be best of us is if the applicant and the neighbor and their attorney work out something that's any different than that. If the board is acceptable to having them replace that detail with whatever they work out is acceptable, whatever that detail ends up to be in the final version that everybody is comfortable with, that will be what will be the controlling construction document for that particular design, so that it has to be built to that standard. If for some reason we can't all come to agreement on what that is, we'll bring that back to the board for further discussion. I think that would probably be the most effective way. But if there's a general consensus amongst everyone of how to address that, we can, if it's okay with the board, we can make sure that gets on the plan and that's done as the completed version of that document.
Let me just back up to Mr. Gemmitt's concern. They're talking about, instead of doing the speed bump, instead, just if they could address which other ways they could feel better to cut down the noise. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I didn't actually make that a condition.
Okay, but I know you talked about
based on that
the
feedback.
traffic, the noise, which... so if they
Anything
could
that
just-
can be done to reduce speed,
Okay.
I understand now.
I think the noise was basically,
noise.
instead of putting the thing there, how they can address the noise.
What it suggests then for that condition is just that the applicant will work with DPD to abate the noise issue for the neighbors to the rear of the project, whatever can be done. So we'll put that as the condition, I believe. And we'll add the conditions that George mentioned.
Darren, do you have any question on what all those conditions may be?
Yeah, let's just walk through and list them out one more time, make sure I have them here.
Well, set back with Joe. Basically, what we started with was the email that we
Want to go
received.
through them, Aaron?
Yeah, why don't I read off what I have, and you can tell me if I'm missing something. The first condition is the stamped concrete sidewalks to include the Walgreens, the area right in front of Walgreens, that the applicant work with DPT staff to finalize architectural elevations for the Walgreens and to bring it back to the planning board for final review and approval at a later date. Fence to be approved along the southern portion of the property, working with the neighbors to ensure that a design is agreed upon. Signage added to plan to restrict access to the site, and that's the southernmost curb cut by Walgreens. That's already on the plans, but we can just keep it on there. Signage plan to be reviewed with DPD and then brought back to the planning board for final review once they have a signage plan. Additional landscaping along the north portion of the site by the 11 parking spaces. This refers to the coniferous trees that they show on the plan. The inclusion of an invisible fence for a locking mechanism of the carts, the shopping carts. Rumple strip or cobble at the northernmost throat. Add 4 landscape islands, sacrificing 8 parking spaces in the lot, working with DPD to identify the location. Provide fencing along the north side of the property with a stockade fence to noise buffer for the traffic coming through the site. Restrict truck access to specific times of day, and then work with DPD to explore options for slowing traffic on the north side of the parking lot with truck. So that's what I have.
The only thing we might have modified is you mentioned the fence for noise abatement, and that may not be the best solution. So I think we had decided to go with just work with DPD to abate the noise issues for the neighbors to the rear of the project, because it may be something other than a fence that does that for you.
But not removing the fence, right? The fence is going to be replaced.
That's one alternative.
I would add the drainage system to address 1 inch of roof drainage. That's
Right.
agreeable to the board.
So yeah, if you're okay with the idea of adding the roof drainage to accommodate the 1st inch of stormwater, I'll add that as the 12th condition.
And the fire department.
Okay.
All the board members satisfied with those conditions? Motion's been made.
Mr. Chairman, if I could have a clarification again on on the north side again, was that to word it so that we're not requiring the fence to be changed to a stockade, but just leaving it for, rather than saying stockade, and to further work on reducing noise from delivery trucks and, coming through there? Or, I just want to make sure. I wouldn't want the abutter to leave here thinking that a stockade fence is going up, and then we just change the wording so that it may work out that way.
We can leave that stockade fence as it was, but they're going to work on further abating the noise issue.
Okay, so change the chain link to stockade and working on abating the...
Yeah, my only suggestion is maybe you say a solid fence of wooden construction, so it's not limited to stockade.
Exactly, sure.
Yeah, because if you have the solid
Yep,
fence,
no, that's fine.
you can come up with something that's even better than this.
As long as it's a solid fence, I just want to make sure that there was no confusion there. Okay, thank you.
And that way, whatever DPD, if they come in and feel that there's a way to resolve the issue, which is better than putting a solid fence up, but most likely the fence and whatever issues you have to cut down, like that noise traffic.
We want the fence.
Could I ask one more question before you finish this? I just want to clarify how we are going to address the truck access restriction condition to make sure that I have something here that I understand what we're trying to address. We're basically working with the applicant to address that. Is there specific, I assume it's the sort of the trying to address keeping truck traffic out of the late night hours?
I think a lot of things is what he said he's going to put up is when he comes back with the sign package, the way the signs are going to do it. I believe at most of their other sites now, at least the 3 that we've improved, allowed in the city since I've been here, they've been pretty good about their time of deliveries, and we haven't had a problem since they've done the other 2.
Yeah, what I understood, what I understood was that we would try maybe put some signs for no outlet, so that people even attempting to go in around clockwise around the north end of the building,
And I mean, like the main thing
and
is,
whatever other signage that would restrict
And
traffic.
the main type of thing we don't want is deliveries late at night and disturbing
Yeah.
people. I know you do a lot of deliveries early in the morning,
Yep.
Usually before business hours open up. I know from the other ones, you don't really have late night deliveries. I know they close usually by 9 o'clock, there's people in there till at least 11, I know, who work at the sites. But usually your deliveries don't come in at that point in time.
Right,
They're small. Usually most of your big trucks do come in the morning. They do the least restrictive ways to get in. For example, when they did the one over on Clark Road, Mr. DeMoulis came to the meeting. He was here himself, Mike himself, said there will be no traffic going down Clark Road. And that was back in 1980-something, and to this day, there's no trucks still going down Clark Road. I mean, he kept to his word, there was no problem. He told the deliveries, do not go there, or I'll get somebody else.
Right.
So I know that usually when the delivery issues have come up, if there's been an issue with it, Mike DeMoulis always took care of it. I know Artie will take care of it. I know when we spoke with Artie before in the project, he was very good about coming forward, and Mr. Kattenbach as well, and they came forward, and we had any issues about deliveries, they've handled it appropriately. So if anything is out of line, I have no problem, we can work those matters out.
Okay, thank you.
So I think if you start with, you know, with the time of the delivery and obviously the signage, I think that'll help the concerns we have on the deliveries.
We just caught one last thing on this. We're kind of going through our notes here. There was a lot of discussion about transit. So, you know, if the board would like to add a condition on the approval that the applicant allow LRTA to drop off and pick up on the site.
Sure, I don't think they have any problem.
Work with and allow.
I mean, usually, most of the time, that works to their benefit, getting
Yeah,
the shoppers to the site.
Yeah, I think as long as the language is, you know, reasonable, if
I mean,
they
I know
want the
it's-
bus stop right in the middle of the parking lot.
From
but,
past practice here,
yeah,
LRTA was
absolutely.
very good about stopping at any other projects that we've had. And obviously, if, as you say, there's a bus stop, there's a sign there now, there's coverage there. And I know more people are taking public transportation and obviously whatever. Whereas I
Agreed.
know your other sites do have the same public transportation that comes right up and picks the people up right by the front door of the market basket. So, I mean, if they work with LRTA with that, LRTA is usually a good neighbor to address those issues with you. Any further comments from the Division of Planning and Development? Having none, all those, I know we had a motion by Mr. Claremont, I believe.
Second the motion.
I thought Mr. Genman seconded already before we got
Oh, all right.
before we get to discussion. My memory serves me correctly. So we had a motion made and second with further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes, so the project passes, 5 in favor and 3 against. What happens here now also, they have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for 3 other issues. If they don't get those 3 other issues, this project may not be completed. So I know they have 2 of them scheduled for a August date, and then they have another one which I don't think has been advertised as of yet. I know you do
I
back-
believe we're on for the 25th, which is
Right.
next Monday.
So they're going before the Zoning Board of Appeals, which will be in this room on August 25th. They have 2 matters on to address 2 of their variances that we made comments on this evening. We will address those later tonight when we do pick up our comment on the Zoning Board of Appeals, but they do have to appear before the Zoning Board of Appeals for the 3 issues that Mr. Lamp mentioned when he started at the beginning of his presentation as regards to the drive-through at Walgreens, the driveway width, and the curb cuts. So, good luck with your project, and thank you very much. You did a very good job. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time and effort, everybody. Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute break to set down the easel. We'll start the next project. Thank you very much, everybody, for your concern and input. Sure, yeah.
Oh. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Good luck. You did a good job. You really did. Like I say, try to get them in that age. I remember we happened to yum yum. Remember that? My mother was thinking we had to go. Somebody moved in. Isn't there something more if you have a yum yum? You can get the door right there. This is what, I don't know what you know how to write your name.
Georgie, how you doing, kid? I saw you over there. It's good to see you, buddy. Good to see you. Everything okay? Everything's great. Everything's great. I'm loving some of your time.
It's gonna come out nice. Big project, yeah.
So what's there right now?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, you know, they tried to get, the target to go there and stuff, you know, what Can I have your attention, please? We're going to start the next hearing. Okay, yep. Can I have your attention, please? The next matter. Could you step outside, please, so we can do the next matter, please? Thank you. Thank you. The next matter we have is a zoning amendment, which is 40R Smart Growth Overlay District. In accordance with the Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 5, the Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an ordinance to amend the code of the ordinances of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Appendix A, therefore entitled Zoning. The amendment would establish a new Article 9, Section 9.6, entitled Downtown Lowell Smart Growth Zoning Overlay District, and extending the existing Hamilton Canal District Priority Development Site to include parcels located at 31, 31.1, and 31.2 Jackson Street. The previously listed parcels are currently within the light industrial zoning district. May we hear the case for the applicant, please?
Architectural Heritage Foundation. My clients are the folks who, a little over a year ago, purchased the property on Jackson Street, known to most people as the CMAA building most recently, and the Adden Furniture Store. I'm here this evening with some help, as usual. Kara Cicchetti is the one closest to me here, and Kara is with the Architectural Heritage Foundation in Boston. Lauren Scheffner is with Bank of America, that's B-A-N-C of Bank of America. This is their community development arm, so it's not the bank itself. We always like to distinguish that. And Michael Viveros, who's right over there, and Brian Pendleton, who are all going to be here to answer questions. I'm going to try to make this brief because, and before I start, Mr. Chairman, would it be appropriate, I don't know, we're here on both of the zoning matter changes you have, so perhaps can we open the hearing and do it all at once instead of...
I have no problem with any of the planning board members have any objections to taking the next zoning amendment extension at the same time. All right, well, let me just read that into the record if I could.
Yes,
Counselor.
please.
Next public hearing, which we'll do concurrently then, will be the zoning amendment extension of a DMU zoning district. In accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 5, Mass General Law, Chapter 43D, and Mass General Law, Chapter 40R, the Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinance, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to the Appendix A, therefore entitled Zoning. The amendment would extend the existing downtown mixed-use zone to include the addresses as located on previous zoning hearing to number 31, 31.1, and 31.2 Jackson Street. So we'll do this 2 hearings concurrently. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go a little off topic because I think it helps to understand why we're here tonight. When my clients first started to put this project together, they were looking to do a residential development and a commercial development, but having learned from the difficulties that took place with the prior development at the CMAA, was clear that the difficulty with that area at that time was that there was no parking, and that the buildings themselves, which are on either side of the Hamilton Canal, are very narrow, not very conducive to necessarily to a retail kind of a development or whatever. So they started out working quite diligently with the planning department in the city, trying to figure out how they could best do it. And I think one of the important things right off the bat was knowing that the garage, the early garage, was about to be built when it first started. The plan was clearly that it would be a very mutually beneficial situation, because obviously now there would be parking providable and provided for the residential and commercial users. And also, the city, in turn, who was bonding this, would have the revenue coming, shall we say, automatically from my clients as the developer lessees of the spaces in the lot. As things progressed, the city approached us regarding this new zoning, and I call it new zoning. It isn't that new. I think it goes back 4 or 5 years now, called the Smart Growth Overlay. And the Smart Growth Overlay, basically, I'm going to let George Proakis do he became the resident agent while all of this was going on, and I'm going to let him go into a lot more detail on what that was. But there are some critical things that are involved in Smart Growth Overlay that are extremely beneficial to the city of Lowell. Most importantly, money. And not just money from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but free cash, unencumbered, not designated, free cash to the Treasury under certain rules and conditions. To become eligible for a smart growth area, and I'll just do a quick summary, but to become eligible to have a smart growth zoning district, you have to be an area near a transit station, including rapid transit, commuter rail, bus or ferry. An area of, that's number one. Number two is an area of concentrated development, including town and city centers, other existing commercial districts in the cities and towns, and existing rural village. And number three, areas that by virtue of their infrastructure, transportation access, existing underutilized facilities, and/or location make highly suitable places for residential or mixed-use smart growth zoning districts. We actually only needed to fit into one, and I think we can arguably say we fit into all three. What this then does is it opens up the pocketbook for the city of Lowell, because as an incentive to developers and as an incentive to the city to make this overlay designation, the state provides a number of free cash benefits, which I alluded to previously. One of them is right off the bat a zoning incentive payment. Now, George, I hope I'm not taking any of your fire away in the process, but I'll just quickly say, I won't go into the individual things. I'll let George get into it, but bottom line, with the 100 or more units that we're talking about developing here and building, and under the smart growth overlay and the incentives that are provided to the city by the Commonwealth, the city of Lowell could get at a bare minimum $500,000 in free cash as a result of adopting the smart growth overlay and going forward with the project. In addition to that, my client's project is for a mixed-use development. We realized along the way that we would be somewhat strapped if we were still dealing with a light industry zone, which is what it is now. So we needed the flexibility to be able to get some retail in there and residential, et cetera. And the smart growth overlay helped, certainly as far as the residential was concerned, but as far as the retail that we might try to develop or any other kind of commercial use, we would have been strapped by the light industry. For that reason, we're asking for a zoning change to bring across the canal, basically, from the Market Street side, the same area. It's extending it. It's not any kind of spot zoning. It's only extending the zoning to that side of Jackson Street where our property is. So in the process, and I promised I was going to be short because of the hour and whatever, but in the process, what in essence happened is we joined up with the city. There was meeting after meeting. There was an awful lot of hard work. George and Aaron became experts on smart growth overlay, and Aaron's looking at me a little strange, but anyway, George and Aaron both did, and there were many people from DPD who got involved in doing this, and it got to the point where clearly there was not, I guess we could say, no good reason not to do this. It's a great benefit for the city. It doesn't hurt us along the way. The addition of the parking garage now at this point is going to be a big plus for both residents that we put there and whatever. We hope to do a great development there. We're talking about buildings that in total are 385,000 square feet of property, the old Hamilton Mill, putting most of it together. And it's anticipated that if we complete the entire endeavor, we will spend over $80 million in the city of Lowell. So I don't know, I have the folks here with me. We certainly will answer questions. I know that I didn't direct my remarks specifically to the zoning change, but I thought it would be very relevant for you to know why we're here and why we want to do that. And if I can, I don't know, George, are you, well, I think could we just give you a quick show of what the project is over here and then go from there? Yep. Michael, you want to give us a little rundown? This is Michael Viveros. There's a microphone for you there,
Green
Mike.
light on. Yeah, right. Maybe they wore it out.
This project consists of two buildings, 165 Jackson, which fronts directly on Jackson Street, and 26 Jackson, which is to the north of 165 Jackson, to the north side of the Hamilton Canal. 165 Jackson is 700 feet long. It's, this is the building here. It's 3 stories. Consists of about 85,000 square feet. 26 Jackson is also 700 feet long. However, it's 6 stories in height. It is about 300,000 square feet. These buildings are both connected by numerous bridges. There's a 2-story bridge that crosses the Hamilton Canal. It's an enclosed bridge. It connects the first and second floors of both buildings. There's another bridge also sort of in the middle of the development at the 3rd floor of both buildings that connects the buildings. There's also a sort of at-grade access open-air bridge to the west end of the development. In terms of program for the project, 165 Jackson, it's going to be mixed use. The first floor will be the Meta Health Clinic, which presently occupies a portion of the first floor. They're going to take more of the first floor, and at the end of the day, they'll take about 8,000 square feet total. The remainder of the building, about 77,000 square feet, will be housing. We envision about 65 units. The program for 26 Jackson is still a bit in the air, again, though we do see it as being mixed use. Adden Furniture, which presently occupies the entire facility, it's looking like they're going to consolidate into the eastern end of the building, which will leave the western portion up for future development, which we envision being, we've done layouts for both office space and residential space, and we're still looking at different options for 26 Jackson. One of the real benefits of combining these two buildings into one project is the opportunities it presents for really giving 26 Jackson street presence. One of the problems with the building, in a sense, or sort of the urbanistic problem with the building, is it has very little presence on Jackson Street, just simply because it's behind the 700-foot wall of 165 Jackson. So what we're proposing to do in order to sort of rectify some of that is, this is, in this rendering, you're looking at the western end of 165 Jackson. This area is presently, this one archway is presently covered in with some non-original construction. We're looking to sort of open that up, which will then will allow good visual access to 26 Jackson. And then a sort of second point of entry that we're proposing is sort of in the center of the block. We're proposing a new entrance here, sort of an open air entrance. An open air entrance, which will be the entrance to the residential units for 165 Jackson, and we're proposing a new bridge which will cross the canal at grade, which will provide a new entrance to 26 Jackson. Some of the other improvements being envisioned, we're working with the city on a CDAG grant to place all new sidewalks on Jackson Street. We're proposing to sort of upgrade this small bit of land. The site has virtually no land, but there's a small patch of land on the north side of 165 Jackson, which we'd like to turn into an outdoor space for the residents. Parking for the entire facility will take place in the Earl Garage. And I think that should provide you with a pretty good overview of what we're doing.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I think in the interest of saving some time and whatever, we have people who can answer plenty of questions about the project, but probably more importantly, we'll defer at this time and turn things over to Mr. Proakis to give a little explanation of, little better explanation than I of smart growth overlay. And that'll, I think, sort of weave together why we're here and what we're trying to accomplish. Okay. If that's okay with the chairman.
I have no problem with that. It's a public hearing. I'll then entertain anybody who'd like to speak. So,
Sure. Thank you.
Say that. Who else would like to speak? Are you in favor, I take it?
Having worked on this, we are. I can provide just a little bit of basic background and then be available to answer questions of anybody who wants to get into any level of detail on this. But the essential portion of Mass General Law Chapter 40R, which is the smart growth, the regulation for the smart growth overlay districts, as planners speak, people call it just 40R, but it's the smart growth overlay regulations at the state level were established a few years back for the purpose of encouraging communities to encourage by right development of residential projects in areas that were designated as smart growth areas. As Attorney Leidy's described what meets that standard for smart growth area. It's one of those three provisions of which this project meets all three. It's something that has to be reviewed and approved and certified by the state's Department of Housing and Community Development. The first step of this was having the council agree to do the application to DHCD, which they did. The second was working on the zoning and having the city put it together, the applicant work on putting it together, and then bringing that whole package to DHCD and having them approve the package as being a legitimate smart growth overlay district, which they have. And one of the provisions of that district, which makes it somewhat of an awkward document when you read it at some points in time, is that everything in the document in the section has to be freestanding, or if it references other sections of the zoning, has to reference them as they are in place at some date upon which is close to the date that it's applied. So it's meant to be so you can almost pull it out of the code and it stands on its own. So there are some things in it that look somewhat repetitive from the rest of our code, or that look like they might more accurately belong in another section of our code, but the idea is it's supposed to be a freestanding concept. In addition, to make sure that some of the commercial uses allowed by the underlying zoning still are comparable to the smart growth district, we propose changing the remainder of the underlying zoning. A portion of it is industrial right now, to the downtown mixed-use district to balance that out. The strategy of an overlay district like this is it's optional. An applicant can choose to develop under the underlying district, or they can choose to develop under the overlay district. If you're developing a completely commercial project, it would probably be easier to develop under the underlying district, where that type of a project is allowed by right already. And because the buildings are completely freestanding on their lots, they're exempt from site plan review because they're within the historic district, and the only review would be a historic board review. A project that was residential in a district like this under the underlying district is a zoning board of appeals special permit currently. It's not allowed by right. Still would be applied the site plan review exemption because there's no real off-site improvement work because they pretty much fill up their lots. So it would require simply a zoning board of appeals review, but would also require a design review by the historic board. Typically, a smart growth overlay district has some sort of design review process attached into it, which is somewhat comparable, but not quite like site plan review, but it's something that doesn't allow a denial. When we discussed how to do this, and we discussed the idea of creating a permitting process that made the most sense for showing the state that we were achieving their sort of expediting process of doing this, the strategy was that any sort of site plan review or design review in this, if we basically copied the historic board design standards and use the historic board review process to achieve that, we were essentially keeping that same review in place that the project would be required to go through anyway. And then all this essentially does is an approval of this zoning removes the need for a residential special permit that would otherwise be needed for a project down in the downtown mixed-use district. In exchange for that, what we are offered by the state is an opportunity as we look through the project today to make sure we have zoning in place that addresses any type of issues that might come up in a special permit review. And in exchange for that, we get they refer to it as a planning grant of $200,000 because we're guaranteeing at least 101 units in the zoning. But there is no requirement that that grant be used for planning. It can go to anything in the city that the council sees fit. Plus a payment of $3,000 per unit. If you do 101 units, that's $303,000. The way the zoning is set up, it commits to that number. It can allow them to go higher as they shift the mixed-use provisions back and forth. We'd get an additional $3,000 for every unit. We certainly have discussed with them that we do want this to be a mixed project, though, because there are additional benefits of the commercial that don't exist at the residential, so there's some interest in getting that balance altogether. So essentially what this does is it, for the most part, does everything possible to mimic the downtown mixed-use district without the special permit process, with a design review by the historic board built into it, which just follows the historic board review in place today. There's one other provision of the code that may address some questions. There is a, I believe it's a 20% essentially affordable workforce housing type of provision in it. It requires a plan to do some of the units with an affordability percentage. I believe it's a minimum of 20%. I believe it's in the 80% and plus of median area income, which actually, when you calculate the values on those projects, put them pretty consistent with where the market rate units would likely be. But it provides a long-term affordability component to that. One of the unique things about 40R that I find valuable is that it, unlike some of the other affordable housing provisions in the state, it allows you to address and create a local preference for the affordable units, whereby you can specify that, like if you do an auction of spaces for affordable units and you're picking people for that auction, you can specify that first priority in that auction go to people who either currently live in Lowell or have family that currently live in Lowell or currently work in Lowell or something of that sort. What we have put in the document is that they have to produce a marketing plan which has to be reviewed by DPD, and our expectations, as is written in the zoning, is that the applicant would have to include in that marketing plan a process whereby local preference would be included in that affordability component, so that we're not talking here about adding some process whereby we're taking units for affordability and bringing in people from outside the community as much as we possibly can. We're talking about addressing affordable housing issues for existing Lowell residents and workers. So I think that's a viable, valuable piece of this that is a real advantage to it. So that's the essence of it. I'm happy to get into the details when we want to get into the details and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak in favor of the project? The zoning, which I should say.
Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board, ladies and gentlemen, for the record, my name is Mark Goldman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. Do you want me to talk about both of the zoning amendments or just?
Whichever you like.
Okay. Regarding the 40B Smart Growth Overlay District, I'm in favor of this. I think that this is one of the best parts of Chapter 40 that has been enacted by the state legislature in a long, long time, and was way overdue. I'm very familiar with the CMAA building from 1999 to 2000. For 4 years, I was on the board of directors of CMAA, so I'm very familiar with that building. And we tried to do something with that building, and it was very difficult because of funding issues. Funding just sort of went away in 2001, 2002, so we really couldn't do anything with the building the way we wanted to do with the various development things. So I'm very much in favor of this, particularly in the sense that one of the aspects of the zone of the site, the plan approval is in regards to the historic board with the downtown Lowell Historic District. Back 1976 to 1984, I was on the Lowell Historic Commission, its predecessor, along with Attorney Elides. So a lot of things have happened since then, a lot of good things, and this is a great project. And I urge that the 40R Smart Growth District be approved. On the other one, on the zoning amendment and extension of DMU zoning district, I also want to be recorded in favor of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Anyone else like to speak in favor of the zoning?
Thank you for the opportunity, Chairman and members of the board, the Planning Board. My name is Stephen Green. I reside at 181 Market Street, a mixed-use former industrial building, which is, I want to say, is a sort of been a great addition to the downtown, and I look forward to these other projects being great additions to the downtown. Two comments. My whole thing about recycling, these are buildings that fill up the full footprint, and they need to make provisions for dealing with both solid waste and recycling as part of it. And number two, if they can work with the rest of the development that's going on down in the Hamilton Canal District and the Jam District, to work on the whole connection of this building and connection through it to other parts of the downtown. Because we do have the challenges of the canals creating sort of peninsulas that make walking through, and you really want to make things much more accessible and get people to be able to literally walk from downtown through the whole area, get up to the Gallagher Terminal and back. So with that, I just want to say support in both provisions, and thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Joe.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
May I, to address the recycling issue, because I do think this is important. Section 969 of the proposed zoning number 6 relating to refuse and recycling, I'm just going to read the last sentence of what we put there. All residential and mixed-use projects in the Smart Growth Overlay District must provide for on-site recycling, storage, and private removal of trash and recycling on a schedule that ensures that refuse and recycling containers do not overflow. In addition, it specifies that refuse containers must not be visible from the street, must not be located in front of properties. They are allowed to be outside, but they must be screened, although typically within the historic district, when the historic board reviews something like this, if they see an outside screened area, they will try their best to try to move it inside anyway. But if it could be allowed outside, it would likely be on a rear of a building in an enclosure screened and of adequate size. And it is specific in the district in the regulations that it has to address both trash and recycling within the project, so that they can't just set up a trash system without setting up a recycling system.
Thank you.
I did want to mention one other quick thing, if I could. I misspoke a little while ago when I said something about retail use. We don't contemplate any retail. I think because, as I said to you, the traffic situation is tough there, the street is tough, and the building size is tough. More likely, we're going to be talking about office, institutional, or something along those lines. Secondly, I forgot to introduce my associate, Mr. Jonkas here, who's also here as a consultant for the developer as well. So he'll be able to answer any questions. So we're now all available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak in favor of the project? Anyone else in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Anybody like to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. At this point in time, I'll turn over to any of the board members who have any questions or concerns. Mr. Claremont, I'll start with you if you don't mind.
Thank you. Just briefly, I think it's a great thing that the city has the resources to take advantage of a circumstance such as this. But I just want to recap to make sure I have it right. If the 40R overlay district is approved and the DMU is extended to include this project, the project would then be allowed as of right with only historic board review, but they still have to comply with the zoning requirements.
That's right, they'd have to comply, if they comply with the zoning requirements of this new section, much of which copies the zoning requirements of the DMU district, plus we put in some extra provisions like the recycling provision to address some issues that are likely conditions of the types of special permits that are typically done here. The project would be allowed by right. It would all still require historic board design review, as that is a state setup process for within the downtown district, so that would still apply, yes.
Sounds like a perfect project and a perfect area in my opinion, but I have no other
Okay,
comments.
thank you, Mr. Claremont. Mr. Lockhart, any questions?
I have no questions. I'm certainly in favor of the project.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fischett?
Mr. Chairman, just a couple questions. First of all, so I can understand as well, when businesses are going in and when you decide what type of businesses you will be putting in there, how will that process work? Will they go back before the PAA, or will they go just to the building department? How does that flow?
Typically, what the plan approval authority is looking over is essentially, and that's historic board, is essentially development projects, as I recall, which for the most part consists of the overall work on the building for the initial work. I think if a tenant changes later and there's no change to the exterior of the building or the structure of the building that would typically require a design review, if a commercial tenant changes, that would be essentially a building permit. If it's doing interior tenant fit out, that's basically a building permit type of review. It's only the initial setup for the office space in the mixed use that would require that type of a review.
And I notice there's provisions to go for a variance. Would they go before the zoning board of appeals for the variance as set forth in the zoning at this point?
Yes, if a project needed a variance, it would go before the zoning appeals for a variance if it needed any sort of a variance from this, like as it typically would. And what we do is we reference in here the sections that reference the process for a variance and the general rules and structure of doing the variance hearings. Those don't change to make sure that there's no change from the typical way something would. So, you know, if there's a height requirement in here and they want to stack something on top of the building that goes beyond it, they're going back to the zoning board for the same type of variance that a project typically would in this district.
And with the change of the zone from light industry to DMU, I'm assuming there's no businesses other than Adden is in agreement with what's going on, or there's no opposition. There's nobody here this evening, but I think I'm just concerned that the
rest of the jam plan?
Yes. Well, the light industry zone, is that in control of one ownership at this point?
That's
the light industry zone. Does one owner have control of that entire zone right now?
Correct.
There's one piece of
one
that.
owner being my clients.
Yeah, there's another piece of that light industry zone that sits over the Appleton Mills buildings within the Hamilton Canal District that is owned by the city of Lowell. This will change half of that zone to DMU if it passes. The other half of that zone will disappear if the Hamilton Canal District form-based code is adopted, because it will be removed if it will be replaced with the form-based code, and then the light industry district along that whole stretch of Jackson Street will be gone at that point.
Okay, because I thought there was a gap. Okay, so that way there won't be any light industry.
There would not be any remaining light industry zone along that Jackson Street Mill corridor once this piece plus Hamilton Canal District project zoning is done.
Okay, and then the parking requirement, it is less restrictive than what we currently have. Is that correct?
I believe, let me take a look.
One per unit, yes.
That is the same standard as throughout the downtown mixed-use district. Yes, it is. Typically, one per unit's an underlying requirement. We allow them to seek that one space in an off-site garage. Our parking department arranges and has available additional spaces for projects that need additional spaces, so that if a person wants to rent or own a unit and only has one car, they're not renting or owning more than one space. But to date, we've always had additional spaces available to downtown residents on their own, if necessary. What we typically do, though, is we structure requiring one per unit. We also typically structure not requiring on-site parking for commercial uses downtown because we want to direct people to the garages, and the parking garage being right here.
The parking that's in this zoning code is consistent with what we currently have in the DMU zone.
Yes, yes.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gentleman?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, it looks like not only the parking, but all of the dimensional requirements of the DMU are either the same or more restrictive than what comes with the smart growth overlay. That's true, right, George?
I believe so. I mean, a lot of these are basically essentially copied from the DMU or
right.
where it was appropriate, and we thought that restriction wasn't quite right. We were a bit more restrictive, and that was the essential. So, you know, I mean, some of the things like the refuse and recycling requirement is more restrictive than the DMU. It's probably something that should be in the DMU requirement to some extent to have that recycling requirement. It doesn't exist today. We haven't had a chance to address that issue yet, although it's been something we've been discussing, having requirements for on-site recycling storage, because it has been a challenge elsewhere, but we did include it in here because it was, we had the opportunity to, and the applicant agreed it was reasonable.
Sure. So the only real requirement is the affordable housing requirement, right, that we have to abide by.
The only thing
that
that's
doesn't seem to
essentially
be a real issue, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing that's essentially new or different, because the typically, like a lot of these districts, they've been done in places, Kingston has done a significant one, a number of, Brockton has done a significant one. They'll establish their own set of design review criteria. We thought because it's in the historic district and the historic board has a pretty set design review criteria for the district, we would just adopt and accept that that's the design review criteria and that's the review process that they already would have to go through anyway. So the only other added thing on top of this that wouldn't otherwise be here is the 20% affordable housing restriction. The wording that's in here copies the basic pattern of what DHCD, the state's housing agency, generally expects to have in a document like this, and then based upon that, DPD would review that document. Technically, the Plan Approval Authority, the Historic Board, does the final vote on that document. Their administration has basically said, have the DPD housing staff review and look at this first, and we wrote that in there that we would review and certify if it makes a lot of sense to us and go from there.
It does say here that smart growth zoning districts must provide a range of housing opportunities for a diverse population, including households with children. How would we, this doesn't seem like a real good type of environment for households with children. Are we addressing that in any sense?
In our case, it's a little tough, Mr. Gendron, because of we don't have a lot of land around us there. Certainly from the standpoint of whatever we do by way of size of unit or anything like that, and any available space, we're going to try to make sure that we're user-friendly for families and children, absolutely. I can't tell you.
But I guess what I'm asking is, it sounds like that's a requirement that the state has, right? That we provide that type of environment. Is that going to be an issue in getting approval for the smart growth?
As far as the state is concerned?
Well, whoever the granting agency is, I assume it's the state.
They've already certified the regulations as they're written today to be consistent with that they feel comfortable that this addresses their issues. So we're already there on addressing it. I mean, certainly that's an interesting question. There is a limited but growing interest in families living in a downtown type unit. It's much more challenging to address. There are honestly very few children beyond young babies that are in most of our downtown units at this point in time. Most of the time what they're addressing and doing that is trying to encourage people to do larger multiple bedroom units. You know, it appears that whatever we did include in here was adequate to meet their concerns to this point. And, you know, that's as much as I know about it at this point.
Okay. Well, I mean, from my perspective, we extend the district, we do the overlay, we get a downtown mill building renovated, and we get $500,000.
Yep.
Sounds like a good deal to me.
Pretty good.
Thank you. I have no comments, basically. I'm in favor of both the zoning amendments. I think it's a good deal for the whole city. I think it'll help tie in nicely with the Hamilton Canal District down there. So, what I'd like to do is, take them in order as, motions. We'll do the first one, will be the Smart Growth Overlay District. We can entertain a motion on that one first.
Make a motion to recommend adoption of that zoning amendment as submitted.
I'll second the motion.
Motion's made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. The amendment of the 40R Smart Growth Overlay District, that vote is approved. The other one will be the zoning amendment for extension of the DMU zoning district.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, we extend the DMU district to the proposed site.
Motion's made.
Second.
Second by Mr. Generman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. So these matters will be going now before the council for public hearing, for the zoning, okay. Any idea when these been marked up yet?
I think we're scheduled.
They will be before the city council on Tuesday, the 26th of August.
A week from tomorrow.
A week from tomorrow.
August 26th?
August 26th. The public hearing there has already been scheduled for August 26th, so your recommendation letter will be forwarded to them in their packet this
So
week.
anybody who's watching at home is basically on these zoning amendments, we only give a recommendation. Our recommendation will be forwarded to the city council, and they will have a public hearing, which will be held on August 26th in the city council chambers. Good luck with your project. Wish you well.
Thank you very much, everybody. We
Thank
appreciate
you for
it.
hanging in on a hot night.
I should once again say what a great job George Proakis did in this. This was a tough one. It went back and forth, and 1,000 eyes looked at these dotting of the i's. You know what it's like when you're putting a zoning code together.
You know, I
And
know you
that
deal with the
section
state
was-
is tough with certain regulations, and by seeing the letter that we get in the package, that the state was in favor of it,
Yeah.
and saying that this would qualify,
was great. We thank
shows that
everybody.
the state was very much concerned too. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, in addition to the two of us, I want to give credit to James Erickson as well. That this falling within the jam plan boundary as the urban renewal project manager, he did while I wrote a lot of the zoning, he did most of the communication with the state on convincing them that this document was, in essence, everything they were looking for, and they were very happy with it in the end, and we all came to a satisfactory conclusion with this. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Well, tell James our congratulations go out to him as well. So the next matter we have is on the new business, which is a proposed jam plan amendment to Hamilton Canal District and Commonwealth of Mass Lowell Trial Court. The planning board will review proposed amendments to the Jackson, Appleton, Middlesex Urban Revitalization and Development District, also known as the jam plan, to reflect and ensure the development of the Hamilton Canal District and the Lowell Trial Court project. The proposal amendment will include changes to the proposed land use, zoning, and transportation improvements outlined in the plan. The extension of the jam plan boundary to include the National Parks Visitors Center parking lot and the redefining of the certain parcels as acquisition and disposition parcels consistent with the proposed Hamilton Canal District and the Commonwealth of Mass Lowell Trial Court project. The planning board's review will seek a determination as to the consistency of the proposed changes with the citywide comprehensive master plan. May we hear the applicant on behalf of this, please?
Would you like just a basic explanation of what's going on here? Essentially, the JAM plan is the urban renewal plan that oversees the district that includes the Hamilton Canal District project as well as a number of surrounding properties. As we are moving forward on this in the foreseeable future, we'll be bringing forward a land development agreement, a master plan for the district, and then eventually, and you will see it in the form of a recommendation similar to the last project, the form-based code, as well as some amendments to the subdivision standards as a part of the form-based code. But the first step before all of that is amending the JAM plan, which was developed, I believe, in 2000 as essentially an industrial expansion plan for a number of industrial users in the area that essentially picked up and left town soon after the plan was established. And over time, we looked at amendments and adjustments to that. Very soon after that, as early as 2002, there was a large large discussion in the city about changing it to being more of an extension of downtown in a mixed-use district, and that led eventually to the request for proposals for the Hamilton Canal District and the extension of the request of the process that eventually brought us to work with Trinity Development, the Trinity Hamilton Canal Limited Partnership, the group we're working with now, to work as master developer on the district. In order to proceed with the zoning changes and keep them in connection with the plan and keep all of the pieces together, we need a certification from the City Council that would allow this major plan change. There's a couple of processes to that. The council will vote on this at some point in the near future. I'm not sure which date. There's also a public hearing on this itself, which I believe is now scheduled for the 25th of August. There's more information available in our office to confirm that. But the role of the planning board in this process is to provide a stipulation that the jam plan amendment is consistent with the master plan for the city. So what's before you today is the wording of the amendment. It's a somewhat vague-looking document, but it is pretty much written in the same level of detail as the jam plan itself. It's really just meant to facilitate the process of land assembly, the process of land disposition, and establish the ability to address the concerns of how the project like this might go forward. So it's just some basic master planning, circulation, roadway, some just general information about how it would work. There are some technical details in that we're adding the National Park Service lots in the Lord Overpass area into the jam plan district, essentially to ensure that we are able to address the issues we need to address there. And beyond that, really just spelling out the details of the plan. This goes to Department of Housing and Community Development, the same state agency that oversees things like the Smart Growth Overlay District. They typically will certify within 30 days any plan amendment sent to them from the City Council. So what we're looking for today is a vote that it's consistent with the goals of the master plan. I think that we can go through a number of things in the master plan that we address some issues of consistency with, but I think you'll see there's one section that Aaron copied for you where the master plan actually very specifically addressed doing this exact type of a plan change.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak on the proposed jam plan amendment? Yes, sir.
Stephen Green again, 181 Market Street. Just want to say, having been heavily involved with the whole Hamilton Canal Planning District and the work that's been going on, that this is just a logical extension of pulling all the pieces together. In fact, there are pieces that we always assumed were in the puzzle, and they technically weren't. Especially, for example, the parking lots of the National Park area, which we were counting on being there. So, strongly support this amendment to the jam plan. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board, Mark Goldman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. I've also been involved in attending the vision sessions and the various working groups of the Hamilton Canal District, and I also urge the Planning Board to vote unanimously in favor of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Anybody else like to speak on the jam plan amendment? No? Hearing none. Any comments or questions from the board members? Hearing none? Okay, good. Nothing? Okay. So we need a vote in favor, I take it?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the extension or the change, the modification of the jam plan as presented.
Okay, we have a motion made.
I'll second it.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Chair votes yes. So the matter carries 5 in favor, 0 against. Thank you. Moving along on our agenda, next matter, we have the Voluntary Green Building Program. The board will review a proposal from the City of Lowell Green Building Commission to incorporate the U.S. Green Building Council Green Building Checklist into the site plan review and special permit review process. The proposed program would have proponents complete the leadership in energy and environmental design checklist along with existing application elements for the said review process with the implementation of green building techniques enumerated in the checklist of an entirely voluntary basis. May we hear the case for the applicant, please? No problem.
Good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead, please.
My name's Dave Turcott. I live at 71 Constance Drive in Lowell, and I chair the Green Building Commission. And I'm here with a colleague, Will Avidson.
Will Arvidsson. I'm from 14 Stephen Street.
And I believe Aaron had just handed out kind of a quick PowerPoint presentation copy. I know it's late at night, and I think this is probably one of the easier items to address this evening that you've had on the agenda. But just quickly, just to give you a quick overview of what we refer to when we're talking about green buildings, you know, as you can see from the second slide, you know, it's a combination of looking at ways to conserve resources, cut down on waste in the construction and operation process, ensure that you have, you know, high energy efficiencies, focusing on improving indoor air quality, you know, looking at alternative energy supplies, using sunlight when possible, you know, looking for less toxic materials in the construction process and within buildings, and ensuring that you can use recyclables when possible, and looking to minimize water consumption. There's been a lot of development within the green building area within the last few years. Some of the key drivers, as we'll go over quickly, include standards that have been developed out there, particularly through the United States Green Building Council, some economic-related drivers, concerns with the environment and public health, as well as several governmental initiatives. On the environmental side, you know, many people probably heard of sick building syndrome as a problem that developed as we tried to tighten buildings and with lack of proper ventilation and design and operational end. The EPA has looked at this as a big health problem within the United States that needs to be addressed. And particularly since Al Gore's movie, climate change and concerns about that have been a big driver in propelling green buildings forward in the United States and other countries. Again, overall air quality, looking at the impact of, you know, traditional carbon energy sources and what kind of pollution it creates overall. Also, again, as we've talked about, you know, concerns about quality of water and conservation, as well as overall issues of sustainability. On the economic side, traditionally, construction and buildings, people have looked at kind of the upfront initial development cost. But when you look at the life cycle cost of a green building, there's significant savings from the traditional building, and more developers are starting to pay attention to that. Also, on the issue of energy costs increasing, there's been significant long-term savings with green buildings. Again, on the side of water, because water costs have also increased over the past few years. Other studies have also shown that actually worker productivity has increased from a traditional building to a greener building, and that's led to reduced absenteeism and savings on health costs. And because the environment's healthier, there's also been potential savings on the end of lowering liabilities. Also, there was a major report that looked at several, I believe 38 green buildings nationally, and they found that while there was a 20% life cycle savings, on average, the upfront additional costs averaged from 0 to 2%. From a governmental sector, as you can see, the federal government has been heavily involved in the area of green buildings. Their Energy Star program has led to at least 12% of commercial buildings achieving that. The General Services Administration is a member of the United States Green Building Council, and they require now that all their buildings since 2003 have to achieve a LEED certification, which Will is going to talk about in more detail in a minute. Several governmental agencies have been developing green buildings, as well as this Greening of Government initiative has led to more green buildings in federal government. On the state and local level, you can see that there's a few states that actually offer tax credits as an incentive to encourage more green building development. 28 states have required green building LEED standards. In the case of Massachusetts, I actually am employed by the University of Massachusetts, so all state buildings from now into the future are going to have to be LEED plus which is a minimum LEED certification plus additional energy efficiency standards, but 27 other states also require it. Within Massachusetts, there's several initiatives that are driving green building. The Mass Technology Collaborative that provides funding for renewable energy, as well as the newly passed Massachusetts Green Communities Act and Commonwealth Solar, a new initiative from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. Several municipalities have initiated green building programs in addition to Lowell. And in the case of the city of Boston, it's now required that any building over 50,000 square feet has to at least meet LEED certifiable minimal standards. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Will to get a little bit more detail into the LEED standard.
First, I'd like to go over the benefits to Lowell really quickly. It will position the city as a leader in the green building and in sustainability. It'll be a great mechanism to develop green building awareness. It will educate the development community. It will spur on economic development in producing green-collar jobs. It will encourage sustainable development. Also, it will reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve air quality. Also, it will be another step to help achieve the city's, the U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement that the city signed onto. And it will also improve water quality and water conservation. The U.S. Green Building Council it's a voluntary LEED rating system. It's certified over 800 projects with over 5,000 registered projects. It's a design guideline. It has a great brand identity, value, and competition. And about LEED, there are 4 different levels. There's LEED certified, which is the lowest, silver, gold, and platinum being the highest. And there's different categories and different programs that they have. There's LEED new construction, existing buildings, commercial interiors, core and shell, homes, and new development. They have an integrated approach with 5 areas involving site planning, water protection and conservation, renewable energy, and energy efficiency, as well as selection of materials and resources and indoor air quality. To go over the LEED checklist, it's just a little over 3 pages, very simple, thank you. Very simple, short bullet points. You can read it in about 5 minutes. And they touch upon a lot of topics that I think are very current in today's society. And a lot of them are very easily achievable, like brownfield redevelopment, just providing alternative transportation, like having a bus stop nearby. Things like that are all very important, and these are all parts of the list. So it'll just start getting the dialogue going and put these ideas out there. And I think that's about it.
Yeah, just quickly, I just wanted to, also within your packet, there's some green buildings within the region. Just to give you an idea, Genzyme Center is in Kendall Square in Cambridge. This is actually a platinum certified. It's about, kind of the Lamborghini of green buildings. It's a 12-story atrium building. It uses considerable amount of natural sunlight. Actually, the light enhancement system, as you can see, has a mirroring system. It actually rotates with the direction of the sun to reflect more light through the atrium, into the atrium through the ceiling to maximize natural light, which is a major saver of energy. And studies have indicated that workers are more productive, in natural sunlight as opposed to fluorescent lights. Next one is the Capilano Green School. This is a primary public school in the city of Somerville. They had received a grant a few years ago from the Mass Technology Collaborative to fund many of the green elements in the school. As you can see, they have solar power. They use natural sunlight, not as extensively as the atrium, and as a way to conserve water. They have waterless urinals in the bathrooms. And the next one is down in Providence, Rhode Island. It's 17 Gordon Ave. This was formerly a brownfield site that was redeveloped into a green business incubator. And again, it uses renewable energy, natural sunlight, and several other green features. And then the last one is Maverick Landing, which is actually, it's good coincidence that you were talking about the Hamilton Canal District, because actually this is a project that Trinity Financial did, which is the developer that's going to be doing the Hamilton Canal area. And this was formerly a public housing project in East Boston that they redeveloped into a mixed housing development. And it's very green, it has solar power on the roofs, and nice view of the downtown Boston. Also, energy efficiency appliance, enhanced ventilation to ensure better indoor air quality, and a large number of recyclable units. So these are just some examples of green buildings in the area. And what we're, proposing, is just basically to, to create a voluntary program here where, from our assessment and from talking to folks in the community, we feel that the biggest thing that we need to be doing here in Lowell is education, and educating people to the benefits of green buildings and how green buildings are designed. And we feel that it would be important to have a voluntary checklist within the site review and permitting package within the city, because this will be a way of heightening the importance of green buildings in the city, demonstrating the city's commitment, to this area, as well as helping to educate people in the development community to what, the LEED checklist is all about, and what the LEED rating system and what goes into a green building. And I think this is something that, it will be something that will be, have a very positive impact overall on development within the city of Lowell, in a strong area for education.
Now, your last picture here, it's the UTEC Green, Future Green.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I forgot about that one.
That's on Hurd Street here in Lowell, right?
Yes,
Okay,
and they are planning, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. They are planning to redesign their building following the LEED checklist, and their plan is to achieve gold level certification. But they're still in the process. They've raised about 50 to 60% of the development funds, so they're still in the fund campaign stages, but they are confident that they're going to be able to redevelop this into
So this would be
gold
something we can look forward to see right here in downtown Lowell.
Yes, yes.
Right?
And there is another complex. Novus Engineering is in the process of doing a building on Middlesex Street, and that will be LEED certified, basic LEED certified, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think they originally came in at trying to do silver, but I think
Novus Engineering.
I think they're looking at just the basic certification.
And we actually have an employee, I just was informed, Tanya, who works at UTEC. So if you have any questions about the UTEC
I remember
building.
UTEC just moved there recently in the last year, right?
Yeah, they did.
Didn't UTEC just move over there in the last year? Right across from the district court.
Right.
Anybody else want to comment on the voluntary green building program? You must like this. This has been your topic all night.
Yeah, Stephen Green, 181 Market Street, but with a slightly different hat. I'm also one of the commissioners on the Green Building Commission. I think this is a great idea. It's important for the development community to have a consistent checklist. They don't have to use it, but the idea is at least all the information is there for them to consider to go through. It doesn't take them a lot of time. They can decide not to do things, but at least it helps us start to educate.
Makes them think.
Makes
about
them think.
The whole thing.
And I think that's the important thing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, it's named Stephen Green, and we have the Green Building Project. I knew we had to get you in here somehow.
Got to be in favor of this, sure.
Okay. Anybody else like to speak on the project?
Well, I just wanted to add one thing about the green. The checklist is also, when it was designed by the United States Green Building Council, they did want to encourage competition. And once someone hears that their project has so many points, the other person wants to surpass it, and it's a good way of encouraging, positive.
Yes, sir. You want to speak? Please.
Thank you. My name is Jay Mason. I live at 77 Tyler Park. I'm also on the Green Building Commission. I just want to mention two things that I hadn't heard that I thought were relevant, and they pertain to basically the marketing value inherent in the city taking this on, because we compete in a regional environment for lots of things: resources, workforce, all kinds of sources for dollars, all kinds of inputs that makes the city a better, more positive place to live and work in. I think having a Green Building Commission and establishing
a priority that says, look, we're going to embrace this green technology. We want to start at the planning board level and get this thing where people can start to see it and feel it and work with it. I think that's hugely important, and it puts us a cut above the communities that we're around with. And finally, leading by example. That was something that was stated in the earlier program, the Green Building Initiative that Dave worked at the university. And I think that's also huge. If we start to embrace something that really makes huge sense in terms of economics, in terms of sustainability, in terms of embracing new technologies, I think we only can sort of gain some leverage that much earlier than anybody else, and I think that's going to help our building community, it's going to help our development, and it will obviously, I think, help the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Goldman, please.
Been a long night. Mark Goldman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. And I've attended the Green Building Commission meetings. And one of the things that's going to be great when the Hamilton Canal district project is finally done is that Trinity Financial is using Icon architecture firm, which has a lot of LEED certified architects. So they're in the forefront for developers of doing this. And I think it's going to be a great thing for the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any else on comment? Any of the board members have any comment?
Jim, thank you. So I'm the board's representative on the Green Building Commission, but I have to confess my delinquency in being an active member of that board. However, I have been following emails and minutes and so forth of the meetings, and I'm impressed with the amount of work that all of you put in on a voluntary basis to bring this issue to the forefront in the city. So thank you for all the work that you put in. I think this is a great idea. There's absolutely no downside to making this a voluntary checklist on projects that are happening in the city, and it puts us in a position to not only support environmental issues, but also raise the image of the city as a leader in this area and give us a very progressive image. So, I would be very supportive of putting this in place as on a voluntary basis.
Thank you, Mr. Ginman. Any other board members?
I just have
Mr.
one
Lockwood?
comment. Is this the actual checklist that would be presented in the application process? The one that was several pages?
Yes.
My comment is that, in my feeling, it maybe needs to be simplified. I mean, a lot of these things maybe need some definition, just broken down into larger categories to make it easier for everybody to understand. I'm certainly in favor of getting this in there and promoting energy efficiency and green building. But
Yeah,
I think it needs to be, looked at closely to make it work. That's all.
The issue you raised has been debated for months within the Green Building Commission.
I mean, it's just a lot of information,
But what we came down to in the final conclusion was that, that this is pretty much becoming a national standard for green buildings in the U.S., and that it was difficult when we tried to simplify it beyond this, but we are going to make available backup material that comes with this, so if someone has questions or more details, they will be able to access that information, and Aaron, will be prepared to.
If I could back us up just a little bit and try to answer that to some degree. First of all, to give the board some concept of at what point this will be entered into the application process. Essentially, as you're aware of, when we get an application for a project that comes through site plan review or special permit, there's a list of submission requirements, and you get them in your packets every time we get a project. All that the Green Building Commission is proposing is that you add this checklist to that submission requirement. And what makes this voluntary is that they're required to fill out the application, but they're not required to meet any performance standard that is outlined in that standard. So they could simply go through this in general. They could simply go through and just say, I don't know, because you'll notice in the checklist there's a yes, no, and then a question mark. What does that mean? And not that that's what we want to happen. What we're trying to, what the Green Building Commission is trying to provide is some semblance of awareness of what green building is. There's a lot of greenwashing going out there. There's a lot of discussion what green building techniques are available. This checklist it enumerates a very succinct list of green building elements that can be incorporated into a project. And I think a lot of developers would find that they're already doing a good amount of these things in their projects. And that if they just took an extra step further, they might be able to get themselves certified, save themselves some money in the long run. But to the question about difficulty filling out the checklist, there is a supplement to this that if a developer or an applicant is going to go through it with any modicum of seriousness, would have to go to research each element to make sure that they are providing a baseline requirement. If you look at credit number 1, site selection, it gives you no more description as to what site selection means. If you're going to answer that question, you have to go to the supplement to identify whether or not you meet that requirement. But as Dave said, if taking a checklist that is kind of the standard in terms of green building and providing it to applicants, this gives a fairly simple and succinct approach that if a developer wants to learn something more, add this into their project, they can do a little bit additional research. I would suspect that a developer could easily finish one of these in half an hour, unless they really are going to go for something like a silver or platinum. That's going to take a little bit more on the front and back end. But the typical project is going to be able to get through this relatively quickly.
And we have also been talking about hosting and conducting educational workshops for the development community. So there would be, we would be planning to do a workshop on the LEED standard and the checklist for people who want to learn more about it.
I think when the city adopts the new trash pickup, starting in January, when they're gonna give you the 65-gallon thing and pay for everything else, I think by the awareness of this and people's own awareness on how conservative they're gonna be where the recycling is unlimited and they're paying a fee for the regular trash, I think you're gonna have a lot more people thinking green. When it talks about recycling and green coming out of your pocket, I know there's some issues about how they're gonna make people pay for bags and what the fees are if you put them in someone else's yard and all those issues. But I think the concept is here. When people start thinking it in their own neighborhood, they're more inclined to think about it when they come in to do a development, where, I think the environment is headed in that direction. So I think the timing of this, when we start doing this and people are doing it at home as well, they're gonna really start focusing on the green building program, out of need and necessity, as well as for the city, as well as our own personal habits. So I'm in favor of definitely putting this on our checklist. I have no problem with that. The board members agree?
Oh, yeah.
I think Aaron just passed across some papers that show some samples. Essentially, the vote necessary to address some of these is based in the planning board's review of their own rules and regulations and application processes. And I think what Aaron presented is some language to amend the applications for things like site plan and special permit review that would, in the review process, I expect that a developer would make some attempt to fill out this form as part of their application process, with the understanding that I think it's worded in there that there's no expectation that they meet any green building criteria. The expectation is merely that they provide their analysis of the ability to do so. And then, as time goes on, if you find out that certain ones are easier to meet than others, we can spend some more time talking with developers about trying to move them towards meeting some of these, encouraging them through the review processes and through the standards you already have to do it. But clearly the concept right now is really just to encourage developers to have more awareness of it as they design their projects and put them into applications.
I think the most recent project that we've seen lately that came before us that had some solar-based energy in it was on the Daily Group, on the one that they had up there for the ambulance service that they're putting up on Stedman Street.
Yeah.
They come in and they put in the way they located the building, took up the solar heat, and it was nice to see that they would take advantage of it, especially when we're talking where this committee was just coming up and we were discussing this situation, and they had a good setup of putting it there, and they, did meet some of those needs with the solar. Because we really don't see a lot of solar energy. on buildings coming through. But I think when they put theirs through, it was nice that they touched on that level and get the energy through that. I know it might be more expensive up front, but if the individual who was doing it were gonna stay there, I think they thought of long-term gains of it.
Yeah, and you may see more because this Commonwealth Solar Initiative that we mentioned in the presentation, was started in February, and with the rebates that initiative provides, plus state and federal tax credits that are now offered, most private developments can get the payback period down to about 6 years.
Oh,
which is
okay, so the return's a
significant
lot quicker
improvement.
than now what it looked like over a
Right.
period of time, especially with some developers on, but I guess the main thing is, it's like buying a house and getting a mortgage. How far out you wanna go, how long are you gonna live there, is the
Yes.
main question. So the same thing on your return here is, whether the applicant is just gonna build it and sell it, or is he gonna try to get it? And I think even
Yeah.
now, so when you put this energy efficient in, then obviously the value of the product is gonna be worth more because the return is faster. Should we entertain a question? I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a couple of comments. One specific to the form. It indicates that the green building checklist attached to the form, note that the board will not require a minimum level of performance based on the checklist, et cetera. I'm just afraid it might be a little confusing to an applicant as to what that means and what they're now looking for. I would suggest maybe some language that the board encourages green building methods, but will not require a minimum level of performance, number one. Number two, maybe some directive on this application that if further information is needed by the applicant, that they can go to whatever the source is that defines all the terms on this checklist.
Yeah.
So that might help them to figure out what it is that they're doing, especially if they're not, familiar with the terms. And secondly, just an overall question, are there any incentives that exist now or contemplated for a developer to, other than the obvious, to meet the green building criteria, any financial incentives, let's say, for a developer to say, let's hit as many as we can?
Financial incentives offered by the city or in general?
In general.
Okay. Well, yes. Well, I mentioned Commonwealth Solar now, so that applies for solar. But also Mass Technology Collaborative offers grants and for other kinds of renewable energy like wind and hydro and so forth. In addition to that, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I had a meeting with National Grid. And as you know, Keyspan is now part of National Grid. So we're talking about doing a workshop that will be targeting the development community in Lowell, probably in November, which will talk about a lot of new initiatives that they have that will be, subsidies that can be made available for many of the green building features that are on this checklist. But, and this Green Communities Bill is going to place greater burden and more incentives on utilities to offer more, to offer more incentives and encourage more energy efficiency in the design of buildings. So there's going to be more financial incentives coming down the road.
And I presume the larger contractors are already aware of it, but I'm thinking of targeting the smaller guys that may not be and may need some assistance as to where to look.
Yeah, and there's certain things like, we had put together, if you go to the Green Building Commission's website, we have 10 things you can do, and anyone can do in their own home, in their own building that will save money. And, a free energy audit from Mass Save, they'll install 10 compact fluorescent light bulbs, which use, 20% of the electricity of a normal light bulb, and that's part of the free energy audit. So there's small things out there. Plus, Mass Save offers other incentives for energy efficiency, Energy Star appliances, insulation, windows, thermal windows. So there are, rebate incentives that are offered through the Mass Save program also.
There's also, just to kind of piggyback on top of that, not existing for the city of Lowell, but a lot of the green building programs that have been incorporated in municipalities across the country, they've developed incentives to try to encourage developers to adopt these approaches. Some are permitting, a reduction in permitting fees, density bonuses, developers to incorporate a certain level of green building standard. Usually it's tied to LEED. Some even do outright grants. You saw that a couple of the states do tax credits as well. So there's other options that I think the Green Building Commission could look at in going down in the future. What that does point to is what George had mentioned about getting this data from developers is it's going to give some information to the commission to kind of distill through of what's being done now, what can be achievable for developers in the city of Lowell, and what elements in this checklist that seem to be a bit of a stretch, and potentially fashion incentives in the future that would help developers locally take that extra step. So there's an awareness piece. I think the primary part of this program is its awareness and education to developers to get them to start thinking about what they can do. But there's also a long-term opportunity to get data of what's happening now and see how we can fashion the green building program in the future to add incentive to get us the next step, take us to the next step.
Mr. Chairman, to that a little, just, and I don't want us to lower the bar, but just asking a question. I'm assuming there are standards, national standards to achieve silver, gold, and platinum. Have some communities developed, and could we develop or look to develop, and see if it makes sense, but our own standards to, as you said, it becomes somewhat competitive, but to kind of pull everybody to that level, but to be able to give some designation even before you reach these standards that at least the city could recognize and create some incentives even locally.
Yes, we have been discussing that very issue within the commission. So one of the things that we're going to recommend to the city manager and the council is to create some kind of mayor's, green building recognition program that would, award some kind of mayoral, award on an annual basis to kind of the, leaders, within the city. And we'll probably recommend in different categories. So there would be someone who would get, for homes.
Perfect.
The Green Building Mayor's Award, if that's what it's called, or in the commercial sector or the industrial sector, and try to, encourage, that. And the other thing that we've been talking about also is, making a proposal to the city to follow the lead of over 100 cities where they've decided, again, they want to lead by example, but like the state of Massachusetts, they want to make, a decision that from now on, any new municipal buildings will have to, be LEED certified or LEED silver. Like in the city of Boston, for any new municipal building, it has to reach LEED silver from now on. That's city policy. So, and there's many other cities in the United States that have already made that decision. So that's something we're most likely also going to recommend to the council in the near future.
Thank you. Do you want to vote by us to add this to our site plan checklist?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Okay.
And I can absolutely incorporate the changes that Joe had suggested.
Yeah, and if you have any question with us, just send us an email, we'll look at it, see if any of the wording should be changed. But I think you understand the concept of what Joe's saying, just try to fine tune it just a little bit to make it less confusing and to encourage them to look at that.
Yeah, and it makes sense to word in there that the planning board is actually encouraging this. It's not just a matter of filling out, but that there's...
Maybe we can even put it up higher on our checklist.
Yeah, maybe we could go first.
By the time you get to the bottom, sometimes they gotta blow it off, if you know what I mean. They'll get down the bottom and say, oh, I don't know. If you put it up high, they might give it a little more attention. And then if they miss it on the bottom, we'll pick them up at the meeting, if it's a criteria or not.
In seriousness, actually, one of the reasons that the Green Building Commission did suggest that we start at the planning board levels, that at least there is some support staff that when applications come in, I can at least make sure they're providing that checklist.
Right.
So this kind of can be a test case. I can provide a lot of support in developers in helping them walk through this process. We have on staff a LEED accredited professional. Our design planner is accredited, so we do have some knowledge base here to help implement this if there is a developer who does want to take the step in doing something. So it's not putting it all on their shoulders. We certainly can work with them on that effort.
So there's definitely the information is available to somebody who's interested to follow up on the matter. Okay, then we'll entertain a motion to accept that as on a checklist to our site plan review.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right. Thank you. Thank you all very much for speaking on this
Well,
issue.
thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Good luck. Okay, moving along on our agenda, we took care of the two matters on old business already, the lot releases in Hickory Hills, which we continued. So the other matters, we have other business, we have notices of budding town.
Motion to place on file.
Matters placed on file?
Second.
Okay. We had A&R plans, none in this evening matters. We do have some zoning board of appeal notices. It looks like there was a couple of matters of continuances and then one of the new business. The first one is a special permit and variance for a sign. This is Splash Media Group Boston LLC on 41 Maley Ave, Regional Retail. Special permit to allow a billboard according to section 6.3.4 of the zoning ordinance, and the variances for sign type and dimensions according to sections 6.32, 6.34, 6.36 zoning ordinance. So this is for a sign, special permit and variance of the sign.
Excuse me, Chairman Linehan, I have a memo here, too, that I wanted to pass out to the board from Diane Trout, our chief design planner, addressing this project. She's addressing it to the Zoning Board of Appeals, but since it got continued, get a chance to give it to you guys for review.
This is the one you gave us a while back, right? That was, yeah.
Yeah, there was nothing here.
And I know it was, I remember seeing it. Yeah. This is Finn's Car Wash. This is on Perry Street. Okay. We know where that is. We approved that. Here we go. This is for okay, let's take a peek. Denial of the CN for the following reasons.
You have the
This one starts out as Splash Media Main Street, and on the,
Yeah,
on
okay,
the
so
back,
these,
on the back end talks about Chelmsford Street. I don't know what Chelmsford Street is.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we go along with the recommendation and recommend denial of the sign on Millie Street.
I'll second the motion.
Motion made, second. All in favor, say aye.
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 The matter, the vote carries 5 in favor, 0 against for denial. The next matter was, is Valley Properties, which is Bridge Street, which we acted on tonight for Market Basket. And that was for the drive-through pharmacy and the required tree spacing and the configuration of the rebuilt existing shopping plaza. We approved the project, so the board members want to go on in favor of this project?
I'd make a motion that we recommend approval consistent with the condition that we put on our site plan and the change in the site plan.
Second.
Motion made, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that matters. The next matter is the Western Ave. This matter we already voted on back on 6/14/08. We voted in favor of that. We did give our recommendation, which was sent to the Zoning Board of Appeals, so I don't think we have to act on this since we've already done so. This was for the Western Ave project, which is the light industry. It came before us for repetitive petition, the complete renovation, and we did vote on that. So I believe we already voted on that one, so I'm gonna skip over that one if there's no objections. The next one is Barlow Signs and DJ Nominee Trust. This is Finn's Car Wash, which is on Perry Street. This is the car wash that we approved about a year ago. So now I think it's open now. And now
I've
they're
got
looking to put a
some,
sign up.
I'm sorry to interrupt, I have some more, actually,
so.
comments from the design planner for you to read on
Okay,
this.
sure.
It's not open.
So this is a traditional mixed use to allow and the installation and internally illuminated freestanding sign at Finn's Car Wash according to section 5. Okay, let's see. Oh, these are the ones we had in the packet, right? Oh, okay, just a little something different, okay. Yeah. Right, and this is the
Yeah,
Perry Street
Barlow
one.
sign.
All right. So the Perry Street, the designer is recommending a denial. To be visible from 3 miles from the Concord River Greenway.
I think so.
Chairman, I move we support the recommendation and recommend denial of the sign.
Second?
Motion is made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The recommendation will be denial on the sign on Perry Street. On the new business is a special permit on sign power on 732 Rogers Street, also known as 724 Rogers Street, regional retail, to allow internally illuminated wall and freestanding signage on 495 Chrysler Jeep Dodge according to the zoning ordinance. I think we have pictures I had a copy in our packet of those pictures. And, we have a recommendation on that one?
No.
We don't have a recommendation.
Two's all you get.
We're 3 for 4, that's
Yeah,
not
I mean,
bad.
you know,
The others, I think,
change the
because,
name here.
because they were continued, they had been available and presented
So
to the
this
board.
one is for the
planning board.
Jeep out on Rogers Street. They took over the other dealership that closed, I believe.
Yeah.
The one that was shut down.
Another
Yeah,
building
right.
Should we refer this to the sign lady?
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
Did you mean the chief design planner, Mr. Jennings?
That's right. That's what I
No,
meant.
let's refer
It's getting
this
late.
to,
Yep, that's the name. Diane Trad, Chief Design Planner. Okay, motion is made to refer this to our Chief Design Planner for the sign. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. And I think we have one on the back page of the Board of Appeals, which is, this is, again, another variance for Valley Properties that we did tonight, the Market Basket on Bridge Street. Same motion on that one, Joe, was indicated before? Okay. Mr. Claremont makes the same motion that be consistent with what we voted on tonight with the site plan.
second.
Okay, well, motion made in second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. That covers the recommendations for the zoning board of appeals, which will have a public hearing that is scheduled for August 25th, 2008, here at 6:30 in this chamber. Moving along after that, the only thing we have left on our old business is any general correspondences from any of the further board members. Hearing none, entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Motion made, second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Good night, and thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah.